The first whisper of dragon scent reached Jon Snow on a salt wind gust that drifted through Dragonstow's courtyard, a scent like heated iron, smoldering peat, and the ozone prickle of a storm about to break. He paused beside a grim wooden pillar in the yard, his black hair tumbling over a brow knitted in wary fascination. Drogon and Rhaegal were sunning on the far parapet, molten scales leaving glassy prints on the stone. But the scent was different, sharper, younger, almost curious. He found Viserion alone on a lower terrace overlooking the dark sea. The cream and gold dragon lay coiled as though guarding a private thought, wings half furled. Pale smoke steamed from nostrils fringed in amber, flecks catching the late afternoon light like drifting embers. When Jon stepped forward, Ghost padded at his heel, crimson eyes reflecting in the dragon's slit pupils. The dire wolf tensed, teeth bared in instinctive challenge. Viserion's head swung, a slow tidal motion, but the dragon did not snap or raise his crest. Instead, the great eyes settled on Jon. It was like staring into a forge at full bellows, terrible, beautiful, alive. Jon's sword calluses tingled, the hairs on his arms rose. In the hush, he felt an echo of that spark Bran once described by the gods would. The moment when a weirwood opened and time lay veined beneath its bark. There was no green seeing here, nor warg sight, yet some door parted. Jon knelt, the gesture as natural as breath, and set a gloved hand on the ash-peppered flagstone. The dragon lowered his snout until sulfuric warmth brushed Jon's cheek. Ghost let out a low rumble. Jon spoke softly in the old tongue he had practiced with the free folk, words of night. Hearth. Pack. Viserion exhaled, and the smoke did not burn him. Above, unseen by Jon, Daenerys Targaryen watched from a gallery arch. The sight struck her heart like a bell. For moons she'd sensed her dragon's unease in Westeros. Drogon had grown restless. Rhaegal paced air currents in tight circles, and Viserion wandered alone. No one approached him without fear. Yet here was the king in the north, bastard of Winterfell, so they named him. Bending no knee, offering no whip, simply existing beside the dragon, as though time had stitched them from the same cloth. Later, as dusk reddened the castle, Daenerys found Jon in the great hall, hunched over a map. Candlelight flickered in his dark eyes. She poured wine into 2 cups and asked, "What passed between you and Viserion?" Jon's fingers traced the paper borders of the north. "Nothing I can name." He looked at me and something looked back. His smile was rueful. "I've no wish to steal a dragon from you. They are not stolen," she said, voice quiet. "They choose." A ripple of silence settled. Then Jon asked what she would do if Viserion chose another rider, if that might help defeat the Night King. Daenerys weighed honor against destiny and answered, "I would bless it. My child's path is his own." That night, Jon dreamed of cold blue fire sweeping a white plain. He stood atop a mound of shattered ice, Viserion circling overhead like a gold comet. The world beneath cracked, and out of the fissure crawled corpses in rust-flaked mail. When he woke, Ghost was pacing the chamber, hackles bristling. A horn sounded from the yard, Dothraki riders shouting in harsh alarm. Jon threw on furs and strode into a blast of night air. The Night King's scouts had been sighted near Eastwatch, whites massing like crows on a dead field. Ravens bore the news, Winter's spear aimed for the wall. Within hours Daenerys ordered sail, the dragons wheeled above the fleet, wings hammering wind into whitecaps. Jon stood amid the rigging and felt the deck roll beneath him, but his gaze clung to Viserion circling high, tail a pale lash against the stars. The bond had not faded. When he dared stretch his thoughts toward the dragon, wordless, tentative, a warmth answered, akin to hearing his own heartbeat amplified in a second ribcage. Eastwatch burned in frosted moonlight when they arrived. The outer palisade lay in splinters, blue-eyed corpses battering the gate with frozen axes. Tormund's men fought atop the ramparts, black silhouettes against auroral skies. Jon disembarked before the ship moored. Icy surf surged up his calves as he waded ashore, Longclaw flare bright in his grip. The cold bit through mail and wool, but another heat rose at his back. a gust that rattled timbers and sent whites stumbling. Viserion descended, claws gouging stone, shrieking a challenge that split the wind. Jon felt the choice crest over him before he truly understood it. Mount or die, victory or endless night. He strode toward the dragon, knowing every heartbeat might be his last. Yet Viserion lowered himself, golden wings mantling like dawn-stained sails. The saddleless ridge of neck scales offered scant purchase. Jon climbed anyway, hands hooking between thick ridges, ghost howling below. A single thrust of wings hurled them skyward. The air above the wall was a blade of winter, sharp enough to flint skin from bone. Jon's eyes streamed. Frost rimed his beard. But beneath him pulsed a furnace. Viserion beat across the undead hordes, whipping snow into spirals. Jon leaned into the dragon's spine, muscle against scale, and in that contorted roar of wind and blood, he felt his mind braid with the beasts. Images burst. Roaring rivers in the Valyrian freehold, hatchling games of flame and ash, Daenerys' singing voice when she fed them, and more dreams of frozen moons and the shadowed song of the other. Viserion's rage became his own. Jon pointed Longclaw at a knot of whites breaching a tower and shouted words he could not later recall. Viserion answered with fire that glowed like molten pearl tipped with amber. Where the flame struck, whites writhed in blasting halos, bones powdering before the ash gust scattered. Jon banked the dragon in a wheeling arc, carving swathes through the enemy ranks. His marrow throbbed with exhilaration so fierce it felt like grief. On the ground, Daenerys arrived astride Drogon, black wings eclipsing moonlight. In tandem the two dragons dove and climbed, their riders exchanging glances in the maelstrom. Silver-haired queen and dark-haired wolf. When the Night King himself emerged from the pine gloom, astride an undead giant, frost spear glittering, he found twin dragons poised above, throats igniting. The ancient ice creature lifted his lance, willing his spears of winter to strike, but he had one weapon and two targets. Daenerys drew his eye, Drogon roaring defiance. The Night King hurled. The spear whistled, a shard of impossible cold, yet met Viserion's flame at midpoint. Fire clashed with conjured rhyme. Steam exploded high, an instant blizzard. Jon felt the impact reverberate through his skull, but Viserion's fire held. The spear shattered in a spray of star-like shards, clinking harmlessly on stone. Riders and dragons pressed until dawn bled pale over a burnt field strewn with dead things that would rise no more. Men spoke in stunned voices of a dragon duo, two blazing spirits weaving death in the sky. Eastwatch held. In the council that followed, beneath banners stiff with frost, Daenerys set a pale stone egg, neither hers nor lost, but gifted by an ally in Korth, upon the table. "The world has shifted," she said. "Ice has met fire and bent. If the wall falls, humanity's last shield will be these two." Jon saw how her eyes lingered on Viserion's silhouette beyond the casement, then on him. "Will you ride with me to Winterfell? We must convince the North a dragon's flame is their own hearth now." He answered, "Ay. And when the North sees dragons defend our dead, they'll realize fire is kin to the wolf." The ride across the North broke every law of ancient tale. People had sung of dragons in the skies over Valyria. Never had they seen one wing to wing with another. One like night incarnate, one pale as harvest gold, both ridden by figures whose legends already churned in rumor. The small folk fled at first, fearing firestorm. But the dragons stooped low in greeting passes, flame dancing harmlessly above fields to melt snow for frosted crops. At Oldtown, a frail woman whose sons had frozen that past winter shouted thanks as melted drifts revealed her late husband's buried tools. In White Harbor, the crews of salt ships knelt on decks, as the dragons lit beacon pyres impervious to sleet, guiding boats through treacherous channels. And at Winterfell, home of broken oaths and bitter pride, the site wrecked centuries of skepticism. Sansa Stark watched the approach from atop the battlements. She had stood under banners that flapped bleakly over the corpses of family. She had heard every promise turned false by the hard hand of politics. But as twin dragons circled above her ancestral keep, their calls rolling like ancient bells across the godswood, something rusted within her heart creaked open again. When Jon dismounted in the courtyard, Sansa moved forward with a steadiness that surprised even her. They embraced beneath Viserion's shadow. She whispered, "Father said winter would come. He never said we'd have such allies." Arya emerged behind her sister, silent as snowfall, eyes bright as if doubled-pupilled. She studied Viserion with the same brisk appraisal she'd give a new blade, then grinned, mischief dancing on her lips. "Is he your new direwolf, Jon? He's a little big for my saddle." Jon laughed, a sound so rare of late it startled him. And Viserion, as though understanding, lowered his head so Arya could rest a hand on a scale warm as a forge plate. But not all hearts opened. The northern lords clustered in the great hall, eyes flicking between Daenerys' calm regal posture and Jon's road-worn presence. Lyanna Mormont spoke first, fierce chin high. "You would have us bend again. First Southron kings, now dragon riders." "It is not bending," Jon replied. "It is standing beside. The dead care nothing for crowns." Lady Mormont's glare shifted to Viserion's shape through fogged windows. "Yet dragons kill as easily as whites." Daenerys laid a hand to her heart. "My child burned only the dead at Eastwatch. I offer that fire to every man, woman, and babe in the north." She glanced at Jon. "Fire and ice do not war. They join." Tension splintered. Glover, Karstark, Umber. Each remembered charred fields from the conquest songs. Yet their memories of Hardhome, of friends risen as enemies, were fresher still. One by one they pledged swords. That night, Jon wandered the godswood, thoughts heavy as snow-laden boughs. Ghost trotted ahead, stalking unseen spirits. Jon traced the red bark of the weirwood, felt its ridges like old scars. "Am I betraying them, father?" he murmured. "Riding a dragon beside the foreign queen, yet she feels right." Wind hissed through dead leaves like a whispered answer he could not catch. Behind him branched silence. Bran sat in his carved weirwood throne, eyes moon-pale. "The dragon chose you because the world chose you, Jon." Jon's heart hammered. He knelt before his brother, before the three-eyed raven that had been Bran. "Tell me what you see." "I see a field of sodden snow," Bran whispered, voice distant. "I see the Night King raising his arms over kings past and unborn. I see two flames, black and gold, spinning about a heart of winter until the frost cracks." Bran's gaze sharpened. "You must keep Viserion alive, or dusk will be endless." Jon swallowed. "Then I will keep him." When the ravens came, hundreds blackening the sky like thrown ink, Jon knew it was time. Tormund reported the dead legions marching south, driving blizzards ahead of them, turning rivers to glass. The wall, still standing, would not forever. Jon and Daenerys planned an ambush at the trident where the waters had frozen. Two dragons would strafe, northern cavalry and unsullied phalanxes would split the undead tide. Gendry and Arya forged glass blades in Winterfell's forges, obsidian singing under hammers. The march south was a procession of legend. Viserion and Drogon soared above columns of men in wolf and lion cloaks, spar banners of House Targaryen, rippling beside deer wolves. Children clambered ash trees to glimpse the shapes against the storm clouds. Poets would write verses that in later years were called forged, impossible. Yet those who saw remembered steam rising from dragon footprints etched through snowpack. Campfires dotted a valley near Maiden, where the army paused. Through canvas slits, Jon watched Daenerys speak soft Valyrian to Drogon, stroking the mottled black scales. He approached, wondering if the intimacy between dragon and rider mirrored what he felt. Daenerys looked up, eyes bright. "He senses the other," she said. "You're Viserion. He is restless." Viserion landed with a whirl of spindrift, folding wings as gracefully as a heron. Jon slid down and walked to her. "Drogon and he, they know each other's hearts, as we do." Daenerys' breath misted in the lantern light. "He called out when the whites closed around us at Eastwatch. Drogon turned mid-wing for him. Dragons love beyond bloodline." Jon nodded. Then, Impulsive, he spoke what had pulsed under every shared glance. "If we live through this, I would know if you might—" Her fingers brushed his lips, halting words. "Speak it after victory. Words have power. Keep them until dawn." He kissed her palm, tasting salt and ash. Behind them the dragons rumbled, a duet of thunder underscoring vows unspoken. Dawn of the battle of the frozen trident dawned prism pale, sun a milky coin behind gauze clouds. The river lay sheeted in ice, thick as castle walls. Jon mounted Viserion while unsullied shields rattled in rows and northern horns called across the plain. From the east came the sound of marching bones, an avalanche of brittle limbs and iron clatter. Frost wraiths drifted above the ranks, their shrieks thin and hungry. Viserion shot skyward, Drogon beside him. The world dwindled to patterns. Blue ranks below, white fissures of cracked ice, the faint red of living fires near the bridges. Jon felt Viserion's lungs expand. He guided the dragon into a dive. Fire lanced downward, hot as forged steel, bright as noon, and the dead burned in trenches melt-carved through their lines. Drogon flanked, black flame gouging holes as wide as keeps. But the Night King strode indifferent, raising arms. Frost tendrils licked over corpses, turned to ash, knitting them anew in dreadful half-form. He carried a greatsword of frozen sorrow. With each motion, a wave of killing cold rolled outward, freezing flames mid-gust. Jon wheeled Viserion back, heart pounding. They must strike the Night King directly. But Daenerys was already stooping, Drogon's jaws yawning to unleash furnace breath. The Night King swung the sorrow blade. A shockwave of absolute zero slammed into Drogon's flame. The fire guttered, shattering into sparks. Drogon faltered, wing membranes frosting. Daenerys clung to spines, jaw set in grim defiance. Jon screamed wordless fury. He drove Viserion into a stoop so steep the air became a howl. Longclaw raised. He aimed the dragon's flame not at the Night King, but at the frozen ground just before him. Superheated glare struck the ice, carving a cavity. In a heartbeat, the river cracked. Water surged beneath, black and raging. The Night King stepped back, spear arm poised, but too late. The ice gave. A crater yawned. Whites toppled in, a writhing mass. Jon hauled Viserion up, in a savage climb. The Night King flung his spear of rime. It hissed past Viserion's left wing, missed by a breath, and plunged into the torrent, vanishing. The undead general stood alone on a shrinking island of ice. Raising both hands, he called more cold to knit the river anew. But Drogon, freed from frost by a desperate twist, thundered down. Jon saw Daenerys' face, fierce as fire-kissed iron, as she and Drogon smashed claw-first onto the ice near the Night King. The force cracked the sheet anew, ice spiderweb beneath his feet. Jon guided Viserion alongside, flame pouring to melt supports. With a roar like distant mountains splitting, the Night King and the shards beneath him plunged into dark water. Silence fell in a shockwave. Whites across the plain froze mid-scream, their animating magic severed. The frost wraiths flickered out like candlewicks pinched. Men stared, weapons half raised, as undead forms collapsed in heaps that steamed in pale dawn. Then cheers broke, rolling like drums along the valley. Viserion landed near Drogon, and Jon dismounted. Water dripped from his hair, from Viserion's dew-wet scales. Steam rose where dragonfire had kissed ice. Daenerys slid from Drogon's tight-coiled foreleg. She met Jon, eyes luminous. He meant to speak, some stark truth avow, but she kissed him, fierce and trembling. Around them men knelt. The dragons lifted their heads, throats vibrating in a harmony that shook snow from the pines. In the months that followed, song and rumor grew larger than fact. Some bards said Jon Snow commanded dragons with his blood alone, others that Daenerys wed the north through flame. The truth perched on Winterfell's ramparts. Two dragons basking in weak sun, tails coiled together, riders standing shoulder to shoulder, as ravens brought word of lords swearing fealty. Yet peace is seldom still. Across the narrow sea, the Golden Company saw opportunity in a fractured realm that might exhaust itself after war with death. In King's Landing, Queen Cersei's ghost yet haunted red corridors through Qyburn's schemes. And in Oldtown, archmaesters whispered of a scroll found in Blackfire vaults, predicting a dragon of pale gold would die to birth 6 more. Jon stood above Winterfell's courtyard one evening, watching children skip between Viserion's folded talons. He felt the old ache of uncertainty. Destiny had carried him from bastard to king to dragon rider. It would not leave him to plow gentler rows now. He sensed Viserion's thought, not in words but in impulses. Sky, flame, horizon. The dragon wanted to fly, to keep pushing the edge of what they were. Daenerys joined him. "He is restless," she observed. "So am I," Jon admitted. She slipped her hand into his. "Then let us hunt the carrion kings across the sea. Let us carve a world where children fear neither ice nor tyrant." She smiled, bright as hearthlight on steel. "A world where dragonfire is the forge of justice, not ruin." Jon squeezed her fingers. "Dragon duo," he murmured. "And the world will learn the difference between burning and warming." Viserion's wings unfurled, casting both riders in a simmering gold glow. Drogon answered with a rumble that raked the clouds. The future shimmered before them, uncertain, perilous, but theirs to ride. And as Jon swung into the saddle, feeling the dragon's heartbeat echo his own, he knew winter had been but the first test. Beyond the snows waited other storms, and together, dragon and man would meet them all with fire strong enough to rewrite fate's oldest script. K. Snow laced the eaves of Winterfell in a quiet thaw, the kind that muffled hammer blows from the rebuilt forges and softened the clatter of practice swords in the yard. A hush had settled over the castle in the weeks since the trident, yet it was not peace's hush. It was anticipation's held breath. Jon Snow felt it under every flagstone he trod. The North waiting to know whether the boy they once named Bastard would remain their own or fly forever in dragon shadow. He took most meals in the great hall with the men, shared ale with Tormund and Davos, sparred with the green recruits until his wrists ached. Yet each dawn he woke beneath the same question: was he wolf or flame? He found no answer in bedchambers or council chambers. So on the last evening before winter's long night surrendered to spring's first uneasy gloam, he climbed the battlements and watched Viserion circle the sky like a pale constellation come unhitched. The dragon had grown restless again, and Jon could taste the unease in his own blood. Smoke without fire, thunder with no storm. When Viserion touched down in the Godswood clearing, trees shuddered from the blast of wings. Jon descended stone steps 2 at a time. Ghost loped ahead, snow puffing beneath each paw. Jon brushed a hand over the direwolf's head, then pressed it to Viserion's warm neck. The dragon's scales shimmered like molten brass, breathing gold into night. In the silence between heartbeats, Jon felt the familiar braid of consciousness knotting them together. And beyond that, a thrum, almost a summons, pulling him south. The dragon gave a low, thrumming croon that vibrated through Jon's sternum. He realized the call came not only to him. Drogon landed beyond the trees, vast and dark, stirring the old leaves into spirals. Daenerys dismounted with the ease of a woman stepping from saddle to sand. She wore a cloak of direwolf gray lined with crimson silk. Silver braids gleamed against the dusk. At her side, Missandei and Tyrion trod with smaller steps, cloaks snapping in the chill. "The Golden Company have taken Storm's End," Daenerys said. No greeting, only iron facts, as always when war roused dragon's blood. Their banners fly beside the lions now. Qyburn commands the walls in Queen Cersei's name. Mems. Jon absorbed that in one breath. Storm's End's wards are strong. Your father tried and failed to breach them. My father had no dragons, Daenerys answered. She let one hand rest on Drogon's foreleg, though her gaze clipped north across ramparts. But Qyburn is no fool. He's reforged Euron's scorpions with dragonglass tips. Reports say the shafts shine black even in darkness. A weapon meant for the Night King turned on the living. Jon's jaw tightened. We cannot allow a second conquest to scorch the realm we've just saved from ice. Tyrion cleared his throat. There is more. He unrolled a thin parchment cracked at the edges. The Oldtown maesters confirm what Samwell sent in his last raven. The scroll he found in the Blackfire vault speaks of a prophecy. When the pale flame falls, 6 embers shall ignite. They believe it refers to Viserion, that should he die, 6 dragon eggs will quicken in his ashes. Daenerys' face tightened as though the parchment held a dagger's point. They would gladly sacrifice my child for 6 more weapons. Jon's pulse hammered. We lost 1 dragon at the wall. We will not lose Viserion for the promise of eggs. Prophecies lie more than they speak. Missandei's soft voice slipped in. But they also bind hearts to hope. Many in Oldtown now whisper of forcing a reckoning. If Viserion cannot be taken, he may be lured into death. Jon felt the dragon's thought flash through him. A bright shard of fear turned to rage. He placed his palm flat to the scale at Viserion's jawline. If they hunt him, they hunt me. Daenerys' eyes flicked to Tyrion. Send word. Any maester or sellsword raising blade or arrow to Viserion will answer to Dragonstire. Tyrion dipped his head, but his mouth twitched with thoughts left unsaid. He had witnessed prophecy warp kingdoms. He had seen the realm trade one mad king for another. Yet he said nothing. That night, the castle prepared for departure. Blacksmiths hammered new dragonglass blades. Tanners fit saddle straps and reinforced stirrups. Scribes copied orders. Sansa arranged grain levies. So the North would not starve if dragons drew new war to their door. Arya vanished into shadows, reappearing only to requisition a Hightower map and a set of small throwblades. In the crypts, Jon lit a taper at Lyanna Stark's sarcophagus, its pale flame dancing across stone skin. "Mother," he whispered, a word newly discovered, fragile on his tongue. "I was a wolf once and a shadow next. Now I am fire, and it frightens me more than the dark ever did." At his side Bran sat motionless, eyes clouded with distant visions. "The fire does not devour the true you," he murmured. "It reveals it." Jon's throat constricted. "What if the true me is the sword that cleaves Westeros in two? Then be the scabbard as well," Bran said. "Hold the blade. Only you can." They sailed at dawn, a fleet of northern longships and Targaryen war galleys, hulls grinding through drift ice until the wind caught canvas and sent banners whipping south. Above, Drogon and Viserion carved wakes in cloud. Jon stood at the prow, salt flecking his face, and watched Dragonstone rise from the sea in volcanic silhouettes. Coalish smoke coiled from vents along the mountainside, as though the island itself exhaled dragon breath. They did not linger. Only long enough to stock wildfire granados Tyrion had devised. Glass orbs filled with wildfire mixed with pulverized obsidian, able to ignite whites or wooden walls alike. Davos loaded them carefully, cursing every splash of green that sloshed too near deck. From Dragonstone they beat across Blackwater Bay in darkness, hugging shoals to avoid Keyburn's watch. By midday storms end-crowned the horizon. Silver surf thundered against the drum-like buttress of Durin's ancient seat. Scorpions lined parapets, black spearheads winking. Viserion's vision flickered through Jon's sight. The fort's lower battlements bristling with fresh-built trebuchets, each cradle sling bulging with quarried stone. Men in half-lion, half-elephant cloaks scurried like ants. Winds bit with brine cold, yet Jon felt furnace heat building in Viserion's throat. He banked out of range, waiting for Daenerys' call. Daenerys hovered Drogon high above, scanning for the single white sail Davos would raise once infiltration succeeded. Beneath the cliff, a sea cave bored into limestone, accessible only at low tide. The Onion Knight rode in with a dozen unsullied, salt spray fretting their spears. Tyrion accompanied, cramped at the skiff's bow, muttering sums of risk. Their goal: sabotage the Scorpions before dragonfire swept. Hours crawled. Waves hammered the walls. Then a glint flashed from the battlements. Arya atop the curtain wall, blade reflecting sun. Davos' white sail snapped. Jon felt Viserion's muscles coil. Drogon responded, twin predators sensing the hunt's turn. Jon urged Viserion into a dive steep enough to slim the world to a single axis of wind. Scorpions swiveled, cables creaking, crews shouting. Dragonglass shaft heads glimmered raven black. But Arya's earlier work bore fruit. Half the cranks jammed, twisted by sand she'd poured into gears. The first bolt, loosed, wavered drunkenly, whistled past Viserion's flank, and vanished into surf. Jon swept the dragon across the south tower. Flame jetted in a white-gold torrent that fused limestone to glass. Men shrieked, armor sloughing like candle wax. Across the yard Drogon descended, Daenerys' silver hair a comet tail in the gale. His fire bit deeper crimson, rolling along the gatehouse. Hinges warped. Portcullis sagged. Unsullied poured through blown doors, their spears black against flame glow. Sellswards faltered, some dropping banners to flee. Yet the Golden Company's core, veterans from the disputed lands, rallied beneath black and red elephants. They bristled pikes tipped in obsidian shards stolen from the north. Within minutes, the yard became a furnace of screams and shattering stone. Viserion landed in a steaming crater Jon carved with his first pass. Bolts split the air, one grazing the dragon's shoulder, sparking off scale. Viserion roared, a sound that shook snow from distant pines. Jon swung from the neck ridge, boots slamming to broken flagstone. Longclaw hummed in his grip. He advanced with ghost at heel, cutting through Sellswards half-blinded by smoke. The direwolf leapt, crimson eyes blazing, tearing a mercenary's throat. Jon met a pike thrust, catching the haft with gauntleted hand, hewing upward. The man fell in two ragged halves. He spotted Qyburn above on the master's balcony, robes flapping savage. The maester turned monster clutched a lacquered case. With skeletal calm he opened it to reveal a globe of green wildfire big as a child's head. Bolts of shadow danced inside. Qyburn lifted it as if offering a babe to gods. Jon shouted, words lost in roar, lunged for the stair. But Qyburn hurled the globe downward toward a puddle of leaking pitch, where Unsullied pressed the last pike wall. Time slowed. Jon saw Daenerys wheel Drogon in a furious pivot, talons gouging stone as she aimed to intercept. Too far. The globe struck, glass splintering, liquid fire exploding upward in a devil's blossom. Unsullied ranks vanished in emerald hell. Shockwave flung Jon back, armor rang against stone. Through ringing ears he caught Qyburn's laugh, dry, triumphant. Yet wildfire is fickle. Flames licked scaffolding stored with kegs of Carthian oil. A secondary blast ripped the tower's roots. The balcony crumbled beneath Qyburn. Jon scrambled, ignoring pain searing his side. He found the maester pinned below a beam. Green fire chewed closer. Save me, your grace. Qyburn rasped, eyes bulging. I am not your grace, Jon answered. He left the man to flame and smoke. On the shattered wall above, Arya waved, signaling the scorpions neutralized. Blood sheened her cheek, but her grin bared wolfish teeth. Daenerys circled overhead. Drogon's fire pressed Sellswards into flight. Many threw arms down, crossing wrists in surrender. Within an hour, Storm's Endgate flew the Targaryen dragon over the direwolf, both stitched by a silver needle of winter. Golden Company captains bent knee in the hall built by Doran Godsgrief, swearing fealty or begging quarter. Daenerys granted mercy to those who yielded, but not to Qyburn, whose bones smoldered under the yard's green embers. Yet a deeper wound festered. The blast had maimed Unsullied, men who survived slavery only to die here. In the infirmary Daenerys knelt beside Grey Worm, whose arm lay in a sling. She whispered high Valyrian comforts. He responded with stoic nods. But she saw the tremor in his jaw. Later, she retired to a chamber heavy with salt-wet tapestries. Jon found her there staring at a dragon-carved mantle. They followed me into freedom and into death, she murmured. They followed you because they choose who you are, Jon said gently. She stood, eyes bright with unshed tears. I feel every life slip when Drogon breathes. She touched his chest. Does Viserion whisper his kills to you? Not in words, Jon answered. In weight. He exhaled. But the dead we spared tonight are a heavier weight on the realm than the ones we lost. She nodded, brushing fingers down Longclaw's pommel. Still, the wolf's pragmatism. And the dragon's fire, he said. Their hands entwined as though each sought counterbalance. Ice to flame, fang to scale. They spent a fortnight repairing Storm's End. Tyrion masterminded new defenses. Scorpions refitted with star iron tips dulled against firmer scale. Davos directed grain from the Reach to feed displaced smallfolk. Sansa sent letters praising victory but warning. The realm now sees dragons not merely as saviors from ice, but arbiters in men's wars. Tread carefully, wolves trust slowly. News came. Queen Cersei, believed cornered in the Red Keep, had fled across the Reach with remnants of Lannister guard. She fortified at Casterly Rock, raising taxes, levying boys. Westerland's gold, still oiled wheels of mercenary companies scattered after the trident. Worse, rumor claimed she consulted rogue alchemists, disciples of Qyburn, who bred shadow wasps large as hawks, venom glistening green. Meanwhile, Oldtown's archmaesters convened a conclave. A rider carried their missive through rain. They demanded Viserion present for observation, citing ancient rites to study dragons within the realm. Failure to comply would result in excommunication, denial of healing and grain to any region, harboring Jon or Viserion. Daenerys flared at the ultimatum, calling it a chain cloaked in parchment. Jon's fury burned quieter but deeper. He penned a refusal sealed with a stark direwolf above the three-headed dragon. Yet he saw the North might suffer for that ink. Tyrion counseled diplomacy. Let them send an envoy. Gather scales shed naturally. Teeth already lost. Satisfy curiosity without risk. Jon agreed. Arya offered to escort the envoy then. Oops. Lose them in the neck. Tyrion declined with a thin smile. During this lull, Sam arrived, his cheeks thinner from travel yet eyes shining with purpose. He bore 3 sealed tubes. The first contained a Valyrian map of dragonflight currents across Blackwater Bay. The second, fragments of cracked dragonglass he believed could seed new growth, like crystals, he explained, sprouting if heated under certain spellwork. The third scroll carried a dirge from Valyria's Doom survivors, referencing the Singing Stone, which some scholars believed was a clutch of eggs that resonated like chimes. Jon read the dirge aloud beside a low hearth. When pale flame beats its final wing, an ember echo births, 6 ring the Singing Stone, shall break, and so the storm of flame no frost can slow. The words chilled the room despite the hearth. Daenerys fingered the parchment's edge. Oldtown would see Viserion's death as necessary harvest. She almost spat the words. Sam shook his head. Prophecies bend under choice. Perhaps Viserion must shed something else. Blood in battle or scales in sacrifice, without dying. That night Jon dreamed. He walked a beach of black glass. Viserion hovered overhead, but instead of flame, song poured from his throat. Notes like bells, each causing dragonglass shards to quiver and bloom into translucent eggs. 6 eggs, each swirling with inner light. When he woke, the song still trembled in his bones. He found Bran in Storm's End's Godswood patch, the weirwood transplanted by the castle's builders centuries ago. Bran's eyes widened over, and when they returned, he said, "The song you heard is real, but songs are cages if sung wrong." He fixed Jon with ancient clarity. Do not let them silence the dragon to awaken his children. There is another way. Done. Before Jon could ask more, ravens croaked overhead. A fresh missive. This one bore the sigil of House Hightower, a white lighthouse crowned in flame. It read, "The Archon of Oldtown invites the king in the north to a parley at Bitterbridge. Guarantees of safe passage shall be overseen by the faith." A trap. Tyrion coughed. Davos agreed. Yet they needed the Reach's grain. Jon chose to go, bringing only Ghost, Arya, and a small guard. Daenerys objected fiercely, until he asked her trust. "As I trust you to hold the sky if I fall on ground." She relented, though Drogon's growl during their farewell shook window panes. The road to Bitterbridge wound through fields greening with late thaw. Small folk along the way bowed shyly, pressing flasks of cider and scraps of cheese upon Jon. Children begged stories of the ice war, Arya obliged with pantomimed white slaying that earned wide-eyed gasps. But tension thickened near Bitterbridge. Flags of the faith fluttered at tents along the Mander. White-cloaked septons escorted Jon to a pavilion smelling of incense. Within, Grand Maester Ebros sat flanked by lesser maesters. Their eyes flickered to ghosts' bared teeth, but they offered cordial nods. Ebros began with pleasantries, praising Jon's valor. Then he spread wax tablets. "We propose a partnership. Viserion need not die. Simply donate a single scale monthly for research. In exchange, we relieve tariffs on northern grain, dispatch healers to Winterfell." On the surface generous, beneath, a noose. Jon's answer remained calm. Viserion is no servant. He chooses his own gifts. Then? Ebers' smile pinched. Dragons lack the higher faculties for. A roar shattered the sentence. Viserion's shadow tore open the pavilion roof, gold wings blotting sun. Jon had not summoned him. The dragon came unbidden, sensing tension. Guardsmen scattered. Ghost bristled, hackles high. Jon stepped outside into gusting downwash. Viserion hovered, eyes fixed on Ebros, jaw glowing. The maester stumbled, ink pots clattering. Jon raised a hand. "Easy." He spoke aloud but intended the words for the dragon mind as well, sending calm. Viserion's glow dimmed, but smoke spiraled from nostrils. Jon faced Ebros. "He decides." The maester swallowed and nodded. "One scale, freely shed," Jon said. "No more demands, and Oldtown opens its stores." They struck that accord. Yet Jon sensed deeper machinations. As they departed, Arya whispered that she'd overheard a junior maester discussing a purge. Dragon blood diluted through controlled breeding. Jon's stomach twisted. The war for the realm's soul had outlived the Night King. Upon their return to Storm's End, Raven screamed new peril. Cersei had unleashed shadow wasps upon Riverland's villages, supporting the Targaryen-Stark alliance. Stings festered with wildfire-laced poison, burning flesh from bone. The river turned foul with bodies. Jon convened war council. Daenerys' eyes blazed. "We end this at the Rock." Tyrion's face hardened to shale. "My sister will have tripled the scorpions, mined every approach." "Then we fly from within," Jon proposed. He unrolled Sam's Valyrian flight map. Tunnels carved by ancient worms honeycombed the cliffs behind Casterly Rock, leading to a cavern that opened above the sea at certain tides. If they could guide dragons through, they could strike heart of the rock while armies besieged gate. It required night flight, perilous in narrow stone guts. Jon insisted. He led. Viserion. Slimmer, could weave tighter turns. Daenerys reluctantly agreed, taking Drogon to harry the parapets and draw fire. Grey Worm, recovered, marched unsullied to anchor siege at the causeway. Sansa sent Robert Glover with 2,000 archers. Davos captained the fleet. Night fell moonless. Jon mounted Viserion on a deck washed with black waves. Wind whipped cloak, salt on his tongue. He felt the dragon's blood pulse with his own. Drogon soared overhead, a darker night inside night. At Jon's nod, sailors swung open a collapsible canvas lamp shielding a beacon. Its faint light would lure Viserion into the cave mouth. Ghost watched from the prow, quiet sentinel. Viserion plunged from sky to surf, wings tucked close. Stone cliffs lunged at them. The cavern's arch yawned. Foam exploded beneath. They passed into blackness so absolute Jon lost sense of up or down. He trusted the dragon's night sight, steadying his breath. The tunnel twisted, air growing hot, smelling of iron ore and old salt. Echoes of wing beats ricocheted like war drums. Once, a stalactite brushed Viserion's talon, sending sparks. Then a glow blossomed ahead. Fungus luminescence, blue-white, revealing a vault vast as Winterfell's yard. In its center coiled a square tower of raw rock, an ancient mining lift abandoned. Jon guided Viserion to circle, seeking the shaft that legends claimed pierced the rock to a vent near the throne room. There, a slit barely wider than 2 wagons, rising near vertical. Jon braced. Viserion arrowed up, claws scraping stone. Dust rained. Jon crouched low, leather groaning at seams. He sensed the dragon's lungs strain then widen, body twisting to avoid jagged protrusions. A seam split above to a lantern-lit corridor. Jon glimpsed crimson carpets, gold sconces. Guards froze, jaws agape. Before alarm could sound, Viserion burst through, shredding tapestries. They entered Casterly, Rock's grand armory. Behind screaming Lannister soldiers, racks of scorpion bolts waited. Jon swung from his perch to a mezzanine, hacking chain lines that anchored pulley winches. Cannon-sized bolts crashed, scattering crews. Viserion ignited the rest, flame rolling along oiled wood, detonating quarrels and cascading pops. Alarms rang. Jon sprinted down flights, Viserion crashing through walls beside him. He needed to open the main gates to admit Unsullied. He barreled into a hall lined with Marleyan marble. Ahead, Cersei herself strode, clad in black studded leather, golden hair shorn close to helmling. Qyburn's last artificer, Sir Adrian Payne, flanked her with a repeating scorpion rig strapped to his shoulder, its bow limbs compacted steel. Their eyes met. Cersei's lips curled. Ned Stark's bastard come to play Dragon Knight. She signaled. Payne knelt, sighting his rig at Viserion squeezing through archway behind Jon. Jon dashed lateral as the weapon thumped. A bolt streaked, angling for Viserion's open maw. Jon threw himself into its path. The bolt speared his shoulder, punching him back. Payne widened vision. He crashed, skidding across marble. Viserion's shriek rent air. Fire spumed, but his aim wobbled. Flames guttered along ceiling, scorching chandeliers. Cersei laughed, a brittle sound. Jon staggered up, blood pouring, long claw fallen. The bolt's head protruded from shoulder front, barbs hooks of dragon glass. Cold seeped inward. Payne racked next shot. A blur, Arya, slipped from behind a column like ghost of the hall's own shadow. Her blade kneel flashed, stinging Payne's elbow. The scorpion rig jolted, bolt fired wild, ricocheting to pierce the ceiling. Arya pivoted, slashed tendon at back of his knee. Payne dropped, screaming. She did not linger. Her second dagger slid between his ribs. Blood hissed on marble. Cersei drew a slim dagger adorned with ruby lion eyes. "Little wolf," she hissed. "I've owed you death since the Crossroads Inn." She lunged. Arya parried, eyes cold. Their blades rang. Jon ripped the bolt free of his flesh, biting down on scream. Dragonglass sizzled against floor. He found Longclaw, heat from Viserion's near flame still hot. Cersei and Arya circled. Jon advanced. Cersei flicked a glance at him, scoffed. "Bastard births, bastard truths." She fainted. Arya ducked, slashed calf. Cersei hissed. Jon closed. With a two-handed swing he cut her blade hand at wrist. The dagger clattered, ruby eyes flashing. Cersei reeled, shock freezing features. Jon leveled Longclaw at her throat. Outside thundered Drogon's roar. Walls quaked. Unsullied horns sounded as gates crashed open. Victory flooded Jon's veins, but he kept sword steady. Cersei's eyes gleamed hate brighter than any wildfire. "Do it," she whispered. "Become the dragon you fear." Jon's jaw clenched. Images flared. Mad King, Nissa, children burnt. He lowered his blade. "Trial," he rasped. Cersei spat blood on his boot. A second later, green shadow wasps burst from cages along corridor, freed by some last-ditch mechanism. They swarmed. Stingers dripping flame venom. Jon threw himself over Arya, shoulder aflame. Viserion reared, inhaled deep, then exhaled a sonic howl. The note from Jon's dream, pure, ringing. Sound waves rippled. The wasps faltered mid-air. Their wings vibrated apart, venom sacs rupturing harmlessly. The song continued, filling corridors, windows, stairwells. Marble thrummed. Jon felt the melody in bone marrow. Arya gaped. Even Cersei's hate drained to wary dread. With final chord, six motes of golden light drifted from Viserion's throat, settling onto the scorched black marble. They cooled into six glimmering eggs. Shell hues shifting. Opaline, bronze, lapis, obsidian, jade, and pearl. Gasps rose from arriving unsullied. Tyrion nearly dropped the scrolls in his arms. Silence held, broken only by distant crackle of burning bolt racks. Viserion lowered his head, eyes meeting Jon's. Understanding flashed. No death, yet birth all the same. The prophecy fulfilled sideways. Cersei snarled, lunging for a pearl egg. Arya's dagger punched her belly. The queen's breath left in a hiss. She folded to knees, hands wet with her own gore. Jon caught her as she slipped, lowering her to marble. Her eyes, crazed, searched the ceiling's painted lions. "My throne," she choked. Jon held her until the light left, then laid her gently. Unsullied surged through, seizing remaining Lannister holdouts. Tyrion approached, gaze soft on his sister's still face. He knelt, closed her lids. "Good night." "Sweet lioness," he whispered, voice thick. Later, amid the smoke-hazed dawn, the banners of House Lannister fluttered down from Casterly Rock's peak. In their stead rose the three-headed dragon wreathed in North's gray. Horns echoed across the caltrops. People on fishing smacks cheered at sight of two dragons perched atop the sea-facing ramparts, wings mantling sunrise. Jon's shoulder wound festered with dragonglass taint, but Sam's poultices and Melisandre's prayers. She had arrived trailing rumors of a final fire, cleansed the black veins. While he healed, the realm began to reorder. From King's Landing messengers carried word. The Iron Bank forgave loans in exchange for shares of Reach harvests. Dorne dispatched ambassadors. The Vale opened mountain passes for trade. Winter, though waning, still howled beyond the neck, yet new roads of grain and peace began weaving. The six eggs rested in a vault beneath Casterly Rock's great hall. Tyrion devised heating braziers to mimic Valyrian brood fires. Maesters argued over incubation rites. Bran came, touched each shell, eyes rolling. He spoke cryptic. 6 roads for 6 riders. Not all roads stay bright. Arya smirked at that, whispering to Jon she already had her eye on the lapis blue one. Sansa wrote, "If the realm hatches 6 more dragons, our winters may warm, but our politics will burn." Jon smiled at the parchment, knowing his sister's mind forever on the scales of power. Daenerys insisted the eggs remain with the realm's new council, a body formed of Northern, Reach, River, and Dorne delegates. She offered Dragonstone as neutral hatchery under watch of maesters and red priests who knew dragon songs. Yet she kept one right. Viserion and Drogon would guard them until hatching. On the first day of the new council, Jon stood before lords and small folk in the throne room, once hoarded by Lannisters. He wore dark leathers, wolf belt, but no crown. At his side, Daenerys wore a gown embroidered with stark direwolves chasing dragons in a circling braid, designed by Myrish tailors to symbolize co-rule. Ghost padded near her hem, unfazed. Tyrion read a charter. Seats for each region, annual moots, abolition of forced tithes, creation of a Night's Watch rebuilt for wildling inclusion. When the charter passed, cheers shook stone. Daenerys turned to Jon, lifted his hand. "From this day, flame and snow will not war," she said, voice carrying. "We will forge a dawn neither cold nor cruel." Jon met her gaze, memories of everything sacrificed swirling. He squeezed her fingers. A dawn for all. In the courtyard, Viserion erupted into flight with Drogon. Their shadows crossed, forming a fleeting sigil of infinite loops. Jon watched until they dwindled to sparks against blue. That night he walked the ramparts alone. Sea wind salted his wound. Stars glittered. He expected ghosts. Rob, Ygritte, Jorah. But only silence came. Then soft footfalls. Daenerys joined him, cloak billowing. "They sleep," she said, meaning the realm. "But tomorrow they will wake to more work than we've done in war." Jon laughed, low. "Peace is harder to forge than swords. I have faith in smiths." She said, and pressed a kiss to his shoulder scar. They stood together until clouds curtained stars. From the stables below drifted the muffled chatter of grooms, the nicker of horses. From the vault, faint vibration, as though eggs inside dreamt of skies. Jon rested hand on stone, feeling that pulse, a heartbeat older than men's empires. He realized the realm he loved would never cease needing both wolf and dragon, fang and flame, just as he would never again be only one thing. He turned to Daenerys. "When the eggs hatch, where will we fly first?" She considered. "Not to war, to summer. There is a little island off the reach. Lemon groves, warm sand. A place for new wings to taste gentle winds before storms." Jon pictured children, human and dragon, chasing surf, footprints erased by tide. Hope tugged a fragile smile across his lips. "Summer first, then." "Summer?" she agreed. Viserion's distant cry echoed over the sea, a note bright and clear, as though affirming the vow. Below, waves smashed rock in ancient applause. And somewhere within stone womb, 6 unborn dragons shifted, hearing the world beginning anew. Oh, ka, ka. The spring that followed Casterly Rock's fall loosened the last fingers of winter, yet Westeros tasted no gentle thaw. A season that should have carried the scent of new grass and milk calves instead. And the strange metallic tang that hung in the air wherever dragons nested. Most simply called it dragon scent, the promise of heat in a cooling world, and they came to know it well as 2 grown beasts, and 6 silent eggs dominated the dreams of even the humblest crofter. Jon Snow rose each dawn before light broke the sea horizon. From the rock's eastern parapet he watched Viserion hunt-breakers rolling in from the sunset sea, pale wings flashing rose in half-light. Since the battle Viserion seldom strayed far from the cavern vault, as if some part of him still listened for shifts within the 6-shelled hearts he had sung into being. Jon listened too, though he heard nothing but gulls and the hush of his own thoughts. Ghost padded beside him, tail flicking salt spray off white fur. Together man, direwolf and dragon measured mornings that felt borrowed. Fragile peace balanced on grayer edges than any blade Jon had carried. Behind him the rock had changed more in weeks than in centuries. The lions were gone from banners, replaced by a circle device Tyrion designed. Direwolf and 3-headed dragon chasing one another without mouth or tail, rimmed by little pointed stars for the 6 eggs. Stone masons chipped old sigils from lintels, but even their hammers could not erase the echo of Cersei's reign. The gold still glittered in treasury vaults she'd once emptied into war, and the corridors still remembered screams that wildfire had silenced. Jon suspected they always would. He descended a spiral stair to the lower yard, where Daenerys drilled with grey worm, and a cadre of unsullied recovering from storm's end. She sparred now with a blunted Eric, silver hair bound tight, eyes narrowed in fierce concentration that left no room for politics. Sweat darkened the wolf-gray jerkin Arya had gifted her, and each time blade rang on shield, she exhaled a short growl of effort. Jon halted at edge of the ring, admiration mixing with concern. She pushed herself harder each day, as though still proving her right to breathe free air after the cost exacted in fire. Grey Worm broke guard at last, dropping to a respectful knee, though the bout was friendly. "You grow faster," he said in low Valyrian thickened by old pain. "Because you teach well," Daenerys answered, offering a hand to lift him, though he outweighed her by half. Jon stepped in when she caught sight of him. They exchanged nods that carried more intimacy than many lovers' kisses. Simple, sure recognition one in the other. She asked if he would eat. He said later, counsel first. They walked toward the tower Tyrion had commandeered for governance. Arriving, they found the chamber already buzzing. Sansa stood at a map-strewn table, red hair braided down a charcoal dress that spoke Winterfell's austere pride. Beside her, Lord Gendry Baratheon, in storm-blue doublet, traced supply lines along new roads his forges were helping pave. Yara Greyjoy lounged in a window seat, booted feet on sill, sea wind stirring cropped hair. Samwell wore freshly laundered Archmaester's whites that looked incongruous on a man who still blushed when Elia, Gilla's toddling daughter, toddled across his notes. Tyrion presided with quill poised, Davos leaning over his shoulder to murmur sailor-plane translations of coin sums into sacks of flour. Jon entered to silence. He unrolled a parchment stamped by the Lords Declarant of the Vale, an offer of seasoned knights to guard the hatchery in exchange for a worm's share of dragonflight protection over mountain passes. At first glance generous, until one saw the clause granting Vale Lords veto in any decision to deploy eggs or riders beyond Westeros shores. A leash of velvet, nothing more. Sansa spoke first, voice like creak of ice underfoot. The Vale guards its ledgers more than its borders. They fear dragons overhead yet covet them. We cannot insult them by refusal, Tyrion countered. Their grain compliments reach harvests, offend House Arryn, and we risk empty pantries come frostfall. Gendry shrugged broad shoulders. Send them knights' duties guarding roads, not eggs. Dragonstone eggs need no steel watchers. We've 2 dragons already. That, Sam put in shyly, may soon change. All heads turned. He cleared his throat. I've felt vibrations in the shells. Heartbeats. More distinct each day. I cannot promise when, but hatching draws near. Eyes widened, smiles lit, dread flickered. Whether joy or fear, none left unchanged. Daenerys rested palms on the table's rim. Then our task is clear. We must decide where the hatchery will stand and who shall watch over newborn dragons. It must be somewhere free of ambition's claws. Sansa's gaze sharpened. Ambition's claws extend everywhere. Aegon the Conqueror believed Dragonstone safe. It became cradle for conquest. She tapped the map near southeastern coast. There is an island in the Stepstones, untouched ruin since Meleys the Monstrous. No keeps, no villages. We could build anew there. Neutral ground. Yara snorted. Neutral? My uncle's reavers still haunt that water. An egg barge would tempt them like rum to a drunk septon. Jon considered. The shield we need is not secrecy, but unity. Better to place the hatchery where every realm can reach and see that we hide nothing. He pointed to the isle called Maiden's Rest off Cape Wrath. Stormland's coast. Central, yet open sea on 3 sides. And Gendry's men could anchor stout walls in granite. Nemtri. Discussion rolled. Hours slid like oiled wheels. At last they agreed. A hatchery keep would rise on Maiden's Rest, backed by Targaryen star coffers, and each realm would contribute a garrison rotated seasonally, so no house monopolized access. A plan forged in trust, or so they prayed. When council dismissed, Jon caught Sansa in the corridor. He noted dark circles under her eyes. When did you last sleep? When the Boltons were still alive? She said, almost jest. Then expression softened. I worry, Jon. Dragons hatch, kingdoms cheer, until they fear. Fear makes sharp knives. None. He laid a hand on her shoulder. Knives cannot slay hope if we keep watch. Her answering smile held faith in him, but less in the world. Then keep watch you must, brother. 3 days later, ships set sail for Maiden's Rest laden with stonecutters, lumber, and half the gold of Casterly rock melted into ingots. Daenerys rode Drogon above the convoy. Jon circled on Viserion, Ghost sitting proudly in a fitted saddle harness at Jon's back, ears plastered by wind. Sailors on deck, gawked up as direwolf howls, mingled with dragon shrieks. Certain the old songs had come alive to guard their timber. Maiden's Rest greeted them with gull-flocked cliffs and fields carpeted in blue windflowers. They landed on a headland where sea breeze combed grasses into silver waves. Daenerys envisioned walls curving like dragon wings, inner courtyards warmed by lava furnaces imported from Dragonstone, tall windows where hatchlings might sun. Gendry marked foundations, his smiths hammered stakes. Sansa's mason crews shaped local granite blocks under scaffolds that rose quick as mushrooms in April rain. While builders labored, Sam oversaw a temporary rookery, a circular tent lined with fleece and hot sand imported in barrels. The 6 eggs rested equidistant around a brass brazier where red priests murmured gentle hymns of Erlar. Some eggs pulsed faint glow at each chime. Maester Brose arrived with a delegation to record every tremor. He kept his bargain, but his quills scratched like rats in walls, seeking secrets. To guard against espionage, Arya prowled shadows dressed as a deckhand one night, a washerwoman the next. She discovered 2 mute cell sails prying at tent seams. One vanished at sea, weighed by anchor stone. The other awoke next dawn, bound before Grey Worm, confessing had been hired by Braavosi merchants who hoped to snatch an egg for 9 free cities' trade. Daenerys sentenced him to build latrines for the garrison, a mercy spiced with humiliation. Months passed in a blur of stone dust and salt wind. Jon split each day between flight patrols, overseeing wildling volunteers clearing forest for farmland, and quiet moments with Sam charting hatchery temperature fluctuations. Nights he shared with Daenerys beneath canvas pitched atop a cliff where breezes whispered through parted seams. Beneath firs they spoke softly of futures, of northern children riding shaggy ponies under dragon-watched skies, of free folk settlements along Green River valleys, of learned maesters teaching girls swordcraft and figures of speech in the same lesson. Sometimes they spoke of nothing, letting tired hands find comfort in another's warmth while Drogon and Viserion rumbled lullabies somewhere beyond campfires. Not all was peace. Roving bands of Ironborn, unchecked by Yara's thinning authority over restless captains, raided Cape Wrath hamlets. Jon led sorties with unsullied skiffs, capturing reavers before they could flee. On deck he faced captains who spat that crowns changed but small folk remained prey. He answered with chains or the sword, but each pirate slain seemed to breed 2 more whispers that dragons were hoarding eggs the way kings hoarded taxes. Sparrows, reborn under a kindly septa named Linnet, traveled the reach preaching that 6 new dragons signaled either dawn of plenty or last judgment. Whichever sermon found ears, it stirred fervor. In Dorne, Prince Quentyn Nymeros ruled from Sunspear with open hand. Yet his emissaries hinted sandship captains might claim a hatchling for desert skies, if not assured, fair say. Even in Winterfell, lords muttered that dragon riders southern-born might forget northern oaths come next long winter. Pressure became constant like wind against door shutters. Yet time, indifferent, brought the eve Sam predicted. Stars unfurled amid smoke plumes from hatchery kilns. A hush fell across camp as the first egg, a shell of shifting obsidian with wine-red veins, shuddered. Workers dropped tools. Soldiers gripped spears. Seabirds quieted. Jon and Daenerys stood before the nest circle, palms entwined. A hairline crack traced the egg's spine. Another. At each breath more fissures webbed until shell fragments fell inward, revealing velvet darkness. Out pushed a snout like smoldering coal tipped by ivory horn. Steam wafted as membranous wings unfurled, slick and wet, dark as maester ink laced with burgundy sparks. The hatchling blinked, golden eyes slitted and focused on Jon first. He felt a tug inside his chest, recognition akin to what bound him to Viserion but softer, like a string thrummed by distant fingers. Daenerys knelt, murmuring Valyrian cradle psalms. The dragonling cocked its head, then chirped, a sharp note that rattled suspended lamps. When Sam approached to record, a puff of harmless smoke made him stumble back, quill trembling in awe. Within the hour a second egg, the pearl shell streaked opal, burst to produce a gleaming pale dragon with sea-green eyes. As dawn paled east, 4 eggs lay silent still, but 2 hatchlings tottered, squeaked, preened wings no bigger than hawk pinions. Viserion landed outside tent at first cry, pressing nose to entrance flap until they allowed him inside. He huffed warm breath over newborns, who squealed and nipped at his chin in playful protest. Drogon peered through opening, low grumble vibrating guy ropes. His presence unsettled the small ones, so he stationed himself atop cliff, watchful. Tyrion soon convened emergency meeting. Name the hatchlings? Who to bond? Jon proposed waiting until each dragon chose. Daenerys agreed. Lords clamored nonetheless. Edric Dane dreamed of riding sunlit deserts. Asha Greyjoy, seeking to prove sea was freer sky than land, volunteered. Even Pudgy, Lord Manderley wrote flowery appeal. Let white harbors harbor whelm clouds on dragon wing. Amid babble, Arya snuck into tent, fed hatchlings morsels of smoked cod. The pale one climbed her leather jerkin and perched on shoulder as though rightful throne. Sam gasped, scribbled. The black and red hatchling crawled toward Jon's boot, curls of steam rising from nostril slits. And so beginnings had begun, ignorant of charters. Abros submitted treatise arguing each dragon must represent one region, lest balance tip. Sansa countered. Hearts not maps should guide dragonfire. Bran, arriving on wagon cushioned by moss, simply smiled. They will know, he said, eyes milky with sight of threads few others glimpsed. That night, Bran asked Jon to walk gardens scented with night-blooming jasmine transplants. Beneath half-moon glow he spoke. A shadow stirs in Valyria. Sorcerers there guided the Doom's children. They woke stone too deep. Now, they smell hatchling breath across seas. Jon's pulse jumped. New foes. Bran shook head. Old hunger. They will come riding wind of ash if unchallenged. He fixed blank eyes somewhere beyond stars. A choice waits. Seal eggs in power, or free power in trust of many. Jon pressed for counsel. Bran only said, Aegon built one realm by flame. You must build many flames to guard one realm. Storms returned with summer's turn. Winds battered scaffolds. Rain pooled in quarry pits. Workers grumbled, but dragons thrived on updrafts, wheeling above cloud towers and diving through lightning sheaths. Gendry smiths forged tiny scale mail harnesses to acclimate hatchlings to gentle restraint. Arya insisted on training the pale dragon, whom she named Snowflake in jest until the creature sneezed fire and melted a training dummy. Then she christened it Frostfire. Jon's dark hatchling acquired name Emberclaw, after burning paw prints into oak floorboards. Rumor flew faster than wings. Fleets from Volantis and Pentos assembled, traders claiming goodwill yet listing hulls with ballistae. A red priestess named Thala rode Daenerys that fires in Aurelor's high temple, showed silhouettes of winged shapes, battling above a drowned city. A sign that if dragons were not united beneath Lightbringer, night tides would swallow continents. Oldtown's conclave requested audience again, citing how unmatched power demanded shared scholarship. Even the North's wildling tale sent envoys on shaggy elk, offering songs that promised weather charm for safe flight. Pressure cracked when the remaining 4 eggs hatched on a single tempest-ripped evening. In lightning intervals Sam and Maesters counted them. A bronze-scaled drake with eyes like molten coin, a jade-green female slim as willow, a lapis-blue male whose hide glimmered silver where rain slid, and a thick-bodied dragon of creamy wine color whose roar shook water from tents. They imprinted quickly, bronze on Gendry, who had carried hot coals in bare hands, forging anchor chains. Jade on a Dornish girl delivered grain who sang lullabies better than lords debated. Lapis on Yara, despite her shock, sea queen of sky at last, and the wine-hued beast nudged toward Sam. No war here, but heart wide enough for worlds. Jon watched astonished. Politics evaporated before dragons choosing. Yet the selection stirred fresh turmoil. Lords refused to accept commoner riders. Dorne rejoiced their fisher-maid rise, but reach lords hissed envy. Vale envoys declared fraud, demanding tests of pure blood. Even within council, cracks formed. Tyrion argued the common folk's faith would swell with such pairings. Sansa worried realm stability. Daenerys sided with dragon's will. Voices rose in Master's Hall until Emberclaw, sensing tension through Jon's distress, waddled in and released a gust of smoke that set scrolls alight. Argument ended amidst frantic stamping and laughter. Still, dissatisfaction brewed beyond keep walls. 10 nights later, a conspiracy unfolded. 2 sellsword captains paid by Pentoshi magisters slipped poison of basilisk blood into hatchery morsels, hoping to sicken hatchlings and prove riders unfit. Frostfire refused the meat, chirping alarm. Unsullied intercepted culprits. Under moonlit interrogation, one confessed a fleet armed with chained wyverns prepared to cross summer sea under red banners of Triarch Malakwa. Daenerys knew the name, a slaver who once bid for her life in Marine. Council convened to act. Some urged diplomatic warning, others favored preemptive attack. Jon listened, then spoke with measured steel. "We will not wait for chains to reach our shores. Dragons met ice and won. They shall meet tyranny and do the same." He proposed leading Viserion and new riders in escort of a fleet to intercept at narrow sea's mouth. Risks loomed. Hatchlings yet untrained for war. But better their first flames lick enemy sails than innocent villages. Preparations whirled fast. Gendry forged light armor plates for fledgling chests. Sam brewed calming elixirs, Davos mapped currents. Arya smuggled crates of Bravosi smoke bombs for distraction. Bran touched minds of ravens along coast, weaving unseen scouts. At dawn 4 days later, banners rippled crimson gold for Targaryen, gray-white for Stark, and new pennants bearing 6 tiny dragon silhouettes above clasped hands, sigil of hatchery watch. Sailors weighed anchor. Drums pulsed. From cliffs dragons launched like sparks from flint. Viserion leading, Emberclaw close behind, Frostfire darting agile through wave mist, Bronze quickspear flanking Gendry, Jadewing circling her Dornish rider Solena. Lapis dragon whirlwind, rising beside Yara, with sea spray streaming from wings. Drogon stayed as rear guard protecting Daenerys, who rode him though counsel counseled otherwise. If her children flew to war, she would not stand on shore. They smelled enemy smoke before they saw hulls. Pentoshi fleet spanned horizon. 50 triremes rigged with steel cables, dragging cages wherein huge wyverns thrashed, jaws muzzled in spiked iron. Catapults hunched on decks primed with pots of slick oil. Red lanterns swung to eerie rhythm. Commands barked in harsh Valyrian. Viserion banked and loosed a roar rolling over waves like thunder reborn. Dragons answered harmony. Shrill hatchling screeches peppered between deeper war cries. Jon signaled descent. Battle exploded swift. Emberclaw, though younger, spat first flame. Short gout scorching a catapult before crew loosed load. Frostfire raked sails with ice-tinged blue fire, threads shriveling as though frostbitten. Whirlwind dove with Yara shrieking ironborn war cry, claws ripping rigging free. Wyvern cage fell outward, chains snapping. Beast tumbled screeching into sea. Triarch's flagship disgorged reserved horror. Ballista bolts tipped with shards glowing purple. Dragon glass infused with stranger alchemy. One struck Jadewing's shoulder. Scales splintered, green blood spurted. Solena clung but kept her dragon airborne, singing old Dornish chant that stoked Jadewing's fury. The dragon's roar built to shriek so piercing, it snapped enemy bolts in flight. Bran's ravens wheeled overhead, swirling like dark halo. Enemy soldiers glanced upward, dread seeding ranks. Jon and Viserion targeted cage riggings. Dragonfire melted iron, freeing maddened wyverns that whirled on slavers, ravaging decks. Chaos spread. Gendry drove quickspear through smoke to ram flagship stern. Bronze claws tore oaken planks like pastry crust. On bow, Malako brandished harpoon gun, bellowing oaths. He fired. Bolt tore Viserion's wing membrane fringe. Pain jolted Jon through bond. He tasted copper, saw red haze. He urged Viserion in savage pivot. The dragon's jaws clamped harpoon cable, molten breath tracing length until gun burst, hurling Malako into churning surf. Moments later, a chain of oil casks ignited amid wreckage, firestorm racing wave tops. Drogon swept across conflagration, fanning flames into towering wall that penned survivors toward surrender. The fleet broke. Remaining triremes struck sails, white strips raised in capitulation. Dragons circled while Davos ships rescued prisoners, offering terms. Relinquish arms, free wyverns, sail home under bond, never to slaver Westerosi shore. Most agreed readily, trembling. On return voyage, Jadewings wound festered. Sam concocted salve of honey, garlic, and powdered moonstone while red priests prayed. Jon sat vigil through nights, Emberclaw curled around his boots, yanking warmth wherever cold sea winds seeped. During final night, Hatchling pressed nose to Jon's arrow-scarred shoulder, as if sensing his buried aches. He realized these small dragons healed as fiercely as they fought. They landed to rapturous cheers on Maiden's rest. Yet trouble fermented still. Oldtown sent Raven. High Septa Linnet reported zealots splintering into factions. Some vowing to crown Daenerys dragon saint, others declaring dragons abominations. In the north, a band of hill clans refused to pay tithe to new council, rallying behind Bronn's warlord, who called himself the True Horn of Winter and decried dragon rule as Southron witchcraft. Even Yara's Ironborn muttered discontent that she rode sky while they bled at sea. Jon convened another council beneath Hatchery's fledgling towers. Voices were more fatigued than anger now, but stakes sharpened. Some argued to disband realm into federations, each keeping one dragon, an idea both laughable and lethal. Tyrion suggested a charter of dragon law, explicit rules for rider conduct, punishments for misuse. Daenerys declared she would sign any charter binding herself first, to show dragons answer to law, not whim. Sansa demanded representation for small folk in writing charter. She proposed forming elective assemblies by shire to audit riders' deeds. Gendry backed her, remembering his blacksmith origins. Even Grey Worm supported, citing need for voice of freedmen. Thus seeds of early parliament planted. Meanwhile Bran drifted through his visions. One dusk he summoned Jon to cliff top, and spoke of a glass candle burning in hidden vault under Valyria's smoking towers. Sorcerers, using it, sought names of newborn dragons, and names answered might twist them to bondage spells. To thwart, Bran said, the dragons must be named anew by true names spoken in fire language known only to them and their riders. Until then, risk remain. Jon relayed to council. Red priests claimed knowledge of such language, tongues of flame. Debate sparked again. Ultimately, decision rested with riders. Each would share moment with respective dragon before Heartfire, forging secret sound beyond any script. Night ceremonies followed. On beach bonfires, each rider placed a scale drop of blood upon burning driftwood. Flames roared unnatural hues. The riders whispered names that were neither words nor growls, but chords of breath and thought. In that instant, Jon felt Emberclaw truly his. Not possession, but shared pulse. 2 nights later, Bran's ravens reported the glass candle dimmed. Sorcerer's quest thwarted for now. Peace, fragile, hung once more. Hatchery walls rose to full height, topped by silver tiles reflecting dawn. Markets bloomed around camp, fisherfolk selling oysters, Kuahoric spice merchants bartering dye-tottering. Children chased dragon shadows, giggling rather than ducking fear. One evening Jon walked coastal path with Sansa as sunset bled copper across waves. She spoke soft. I feared dragons would devour what heart you had left. He smiled sideways. They fed it instead. She took his arm. Then guard that heart, brother. Realms fall when hearts grow hungry. They paused where tide hissed over stones. Sansa bent, chose a shell, traced ridges. Mother taught we leave shells behind when we outgrow them, but we carry their imprint. She offered it to him. He pocketed quietly. Months later, trouble from north flared. The True Horn of Winter. Real name Huther Flint. Raided last hearth granaries. Burned barns bearing sigil of new council. He rallied clansmen under banner depicting weirwood pierced by dragon talon. Swearing to kill any worm crossing Wolfswood. Sansa wrote urgent plea. Empty watchtowers, displaced smallfolk seeking refuge behind Winterfell walls. Daenerys insisted she accompany Jon north with Frostfire, Emberclaw, and Grey Worm's legion of Unsullied. Tyrion argued evacuating hatcheries newborns risky. Bran prophesied no dragon must cross weeping water lest ancient pact break. Choices, again sharpened. Jon decided to ride alone first, on Viserion and Ghost, to Parley. Daenerys objected but saw need. Northern blood might heed northern voice. He left before dawn, promising return before first snows, though autumn barely kissed leaves. Flight home felt both return and exile. Northern forests rolled beneath, dark seas of fur. Ghost sensed home too. Howled over tors where once deerwolves hunted. They landed outside last hearth-scorched grounds. Smoke still rose from barns. Other Flint awaited, flanked by clansmen armed in hides, carrying axes forged pre-conquest. He greeted Jon with respect tainted by suspicion. They spoke in hall where father of Huther lay entombed in ice-stone slab. Gout. Flint's grievances spilled. Southern laws taxed hides. Dragons passed overhead, spooking elk. Hatchery charter written by lords. Never asked clan word. Jon listened then countered. He offered each clan seat rotating on northern moot to decide grain levies. Guaranteed dragonflight paths avoiding sacred groves. Promised supply of obsidian tools in exchange for watchposts along northern border. Flint mulled, while mead horns emptied, grudges airing like damp furs, until dawn's gray chilled embers. In first light he clasped Jon's forearm. "You speak like Winterfell's true son, I will listen." They crafted pact, etched on elk hide. Ghost pressed paw in ash to mark witness. Viserion watched from courtyard. Smoke curling. Travel back past calm until Frostfell Pass, where fog thick as wool swallowed them. Out of white soared two winged shapes larger than wyverns. Scales a dull, iron sheen. Cry unlike dragon or wyvern. Rasping whistle, echoed. Viserion banked. Jon glimpsed riders garbed in stone-colored mail daubed red sigils. Twin masks. They hurled spears glinting venom green. One grazed Viserion's flank. Smoke of acid hissed. Jon drew Longclaw, shouted. Ghost snarled against wind, teeth bared. Viserion belched fire. One creature veered aflame, toppled into mist. The other lunged, tail barbed. Jon ducked. Barb sliced cloak. He slashed upward. Steel bit membrane sending creature spiraling. Riders abandoned saddles, deploying glider wings to vanish into fog. Jon steadied Viserion to land at glacial tarn. He treated wound with dragonglass salve kit. Sam prepared, heart pounding. Whoever they were, they hunted far from Valyria perhaps. He reached Maiden's Rest 2 days later, weary. Daenerys met him mid-air on Drogon, relieved. Tyrion examined Acid Spear. Said forging bore Volantis mark. Threats multiplied while eggs matured. Council hardened resolves. Speed completion of Dragon Law Charter, expand scouting beyond seas, and convene Grand Moot next flood moon, where common folk elect voices. Jon watched parchment fill with clauses, but wondered if words could cage storms. Still, hope breathed. Jadewing fully healed. Frostfire learned to carry Arya in barrel roll dives that left unsullied cheering. Lapis Whirlwind ushered Yara across narrow sea to treat with new Giz, seeking alliance. Small folk festivals honored dragon dance with colored kites instead of banners of blood. One crisp evening, Jon and Daenerys climbed Hatchery Keep's highest tower. Below, 6 young dragons dozed in sun-warmed courtyard, wings half spread like sails at rest. Bells from harbor told shift change. Gulls wheeled, catching updrafts around spires. Daenerys leaned into Jon's side. "When I was a girl in exile, I dreamed dragons would set me free. They have, but not as I expected. Freedom is heavier than chains." He tightened arm around her. "Weight worth bearing." She studied horizon where haze blurred sea and sky. "Do you ever fear we build something doomed to burn the moment we blink?" "All things burn," he said. "But the warmth they give before matters." She smiled faintly. "You sound a philosopher." "Direwolf's wisdom," he teased. Wind tossed silver hair across her face. She turned, kissed him softly. Against his lips she whispered, "If winter comes again, we'll have more fire this time." He rested forehead to hers. And more hearts to shield. Above them Viserion roared playful challenge to Drogon, who answered with rolling thunder. Emberclaw stirred, chirped. Sleepy note. Frostfire flapped onto tower ledge, cocking head as if guardian. Jon watched stars kindle one by one. For that breath he believed Bran's woven tapestry might hold. Many flames guarding one realm. Yet somewhere far across waves, riders in stone masks gathered acid spears beside glass candles, waiting for cracks in weave. Still, peace held long enough for another dawn, and in that fragile blue Jon Snow allowed himself to imagine children chasing hatchling dragons across tide-smoothed sand, laughter tossed like pebbles in surf. For now, that was enough. The sky over Maiden's Rest bruised purple as dusk slipped toward true night, and campfires pricked the headland like scattered embers dropped by careless gods. Jon Snow stood on the merlon of the half-finished east wall, the raw stone gritty beneath his palms, and tried to read the wind. It smelled of tar and wet mortar, of pine sawed from Stormland's forests, of distant seaweed ripening in moon-dragged tides. But beneath those familiar notes rode another scent, thin as a flute in a bellowing hall. Dragon fear. Viserion's pale shape traced a slow circle above the courtyard, where the 6 young dragons dozed. Every so often the great beast tilted his head, as though listening for a voice only he could hear, and his wings juddered in troubled half-beats, before settling again. Jon touched his own breastbone, feeling the echo of that unease. The skirmish in Frostfell Pass had lasted minutes, but the memory of barbed tails and green-hissed acid burned like frostbite in his blood. He had spent a fortnight since riding patrols from Wolfswood to Narrow Sea, searching the clouds for gray shapes and finding none. Yet the riders were out there, shadows cast by some deeper storm. Bran had spoken of a glass candle dimming, but the candle's pale glow might flare again, and then all the quiet hope they had nursed here would gutter like tallow in a gale. Boots scuffed behind him. Daenerys approached, the wind snapping her cloak like a standard. Torchlight gilded the fine sweat on her brow. She had been drilling late with Grey Worm again, hammering steel at straw men until the straw smoldered. She joined him without a word, setting her forearms on the merlon beside his. Together, they watched waves sheet silver under a waxing moon. They will make landfall soon, she said at last, voice low. Jon did not need to ask who she meant. Ravens across 3 kingdoms carried rumors now. Scar-masked riders, acid spears, wyvern packs drawn by shrill bone whistles. Pinched framed reports trickled in from Pento's lies, even Tolos, merchant galleys found drifting empty, scorched in weird patterns that no normal flame could carve. In every tale, the wind howled east to west, and the survivors spoke of wings like iron shutters closing out the sun. "I won't wait for them to choose the battlefield," Jon replied. "I set scouts along the stepstones, but that is fishing with yarn for sharks." His fingers drummed the stone. "We need to know who they are, what they want." Daenerys turned to study him, moonlight turning her lilac eyes to polished shards of ice. "You think they want the dragons? What else would bring Valyrian ghosts to Westeros? The eggs hatched too early for their liking. They meant to strike before new riders bonded." He exhaled a thread of laughter. Emberclaw spoiled that plan by being born nosy. Her answering smile was brief, almost shy. "Your little furnace likes to chew on everything. He'll char our food stores if we don't train him to hunt seals soon." Jon's heart hitched at the easy warmth in her voice. Moments like this were fragile crystal he feared to grip too hard. "We will. After the moot." "Oh." Mention of the grand moot tightened both their shoulders. In 4 days, every elected voice from the shires would converge on Maiden's Rest. Fishermen from White Harbor, rivermen who could scarcely read, Dothraki bloodriders nominated by the freed camps in the Reach, Summer Island traders in feathered cloaks. For the first time in living memory, small folk would speak alongside lords beneath the same roof, and those lords did not like the new seating chart. Sansa had written Jon a tart letter, half apology, half threat. I will keep the northern delegates calm, but if Lord Serwyn declares his dogs have more right to bark than a potter's boy, he may lose a finger. Jon suspected she was not joking. He studied Daenerys' profile. The faint scar along her cheek from Volantis ballista splinter. The way her braid loosened toward tips, as if even her hair disliked confinement. If the moot fractures, we still stand, he said, though not with the certainty he wished. But the realm will turn soft in the belly, and those riders will smell weakness. Then we cannot allow fracture, she said. We will go into the moot together, present the charter, swear by it above all crowns. No lord can split what dragon and wolf refuse to tear. He nodded, yet shadows gnawed him. Charters and oaths had bound Westeros to the Iron Throne once, and still wildfire had licked through Septon streets. Fear draws daggers faster than parchment draws ink. Below, someone called his name. Gendry strode from forge tents. Sweat-dark tunic stuck to bulk of his shoulders. Beside him paddled the bronze dragonling Quickspear, wings buzzing in eagerness, nose seeking sparks flung from the smith's anvil like fireflies. When Quickspear sneezed a comet of heat that popped a charcoal bucket, Gendry cuffed him lightly. No, you great kettle, forge is closed. He shaded eyes up at Jon. Need you in council. Thing you must see. Jon and Daenerys exchanged a glance. They left the wall, descending ladders to stone ramps still rough. Emberclaw awaited them at the courtyard arch, chewing a charred barrel hoop. The young dragon dropped it to huff greeting. Smoke curling like a smile. Jon scratched under the jaw ridge and earned a thrum of pleasure. Together they crossed the ward toward the council pavilion pitched outside the half-built keep. Tyrion paced under its canvas roof, hair whipping in lantern breeze. Sam sat beside a parchment-littered table, cradling the spear barb recovered from Jadewing's wound. Next to him, Bran in his carved weirwood chair stared at nothing, pupils thin as hair. Tyrion plunged straight to business. Our spies in Pentos confirm a cult calling themselves the Ashen Brotherhood. Former scions of slave-master houses, Valyrian blood obsessives, alchemists all under a leader named Magarax the Unshorn. They breed wyverns in shadow cribs, feed them smelted ores to thicken scale, and they worship a notion that dragons belong only to those with pure blood of the 12s. Pure rot, Daenerys muttered. Tyrion gestured to Sam. The barb you brought, obsidian fused with basilisk bile, then tempered in molten ironstone from Valyria's black rivers. Only a handful of forges could craft it. Magarax owns 3. Then? Gendry crossed arms. Can it pierce grown scales? Sam's mouth twitched uneasily. Against a fledgling, yes. Against Viserion or Drogon, unlikely, unless fired point-blank at underwing soft membrane. Jon processed, mind turning like grindwheel. So, they know dragons' weak spots. They waited until hatchlings bonded to riders who aren't their bloodline, and now they move. Bran spoke abruptly, voice distant. Glass candles whisper stormfire. They want the hatchlings alive, not dead. They seek binding spells, the older dragons for sacrifice to break young wills. A pall fell over canvas. Emberclaw shuffled closer to Jon's leg, sensing tension. Tyrion set his hands on the table, small fingers splayed. We cannot postpone the moot, but if the Ashen Brotherhood strikes during assembly, they could seize all 6 at once, bury realm in panic. Daenerys straightened. Then we turn moot into strength. Fill these grounds with people from every realm, witnesses. Attacking here would be assault on all Westeros. Even Magarax's arrogance may balk. Or he launches anyway and slaughters common folk to shame us, Arya said, stepping from behind a tent post. No one yelped. They had grown used to her sudden arrivals. Frostfire perched above, claws curled on ridgepole. Jon met Arya's cool gaze. We must plan for both outcomes. His knuckles whitened. If they come, they'll come by air. Bran again. Not by sea. The sea will boil beneath them. Iron wings carried on thermal vents. They'll rise swift, drop silent. Daenerys' hand had found Drogon's scale token at her throat, a habit when troubled. Then we build a ring of aerial watch. Viserion, Drogon, Whirlwind, and Quickspear can patrol day and night. Sam interjected. Hatchlings tire quick, but I have an idea. The pyromancers in King's Landing developed signal orbs that burst in colored smoke, sky lanterns. We loft them on the updraft above the headland. If anything crosses, shadow cuts color, patrols dive. Tyrion smiled crookedly. A bow, early warning, net.omu. Pretty and practical. I approve. And no. Plans crystallize through the long night. Watch rotations, harbor chains, blessing of the faith to ward zealot sabotage, discreet caches of dragonglass crossbow bolts to arm farmers on hill flanks. Not every measure would stop wyverns, but layers might slow. When council adjourned hour before dawn, Jon and Daenerys lingered. Lanterns guttered around them. She traced circles on the back of his scarred hand. Will you still marry me after this moot? She asked so softly he almost believed he dreamed it. His heart thudded like a distant drum. They had spoken of vows, but never chosen day. I will marry you before winter's return, he said. Whether in a hall of banners or amid ruins doesn't change, yes. Her lips curved, and she whispered something in Valyrian he could not fully translate, but felt sink warm into his chest. Promise older than kingdoms. The days that followed raced as though time had spurred itself. Ships ferried delegates from White Harbor, Gulltown, Sunspear.I. They erected bright tents along plateau below the keep, pennants flicking in wind like forest of ideals. Small folk gawked at dragons wheeling overhead. Children tugged riders' cloaks, asking to touch scaled talons shed by juveniles. The smell of frying cod and Dornish peppers mingled strange harmony. Some lords scowled at the carnival spirit, but Jon saw hope there, the first festival not about war in longer than most could recall. On Moot's dawn the sun climbed a flawless sky, gilding new-laid roof tiles. Glinting off the steel ribs of arena seats carpenters, had hammered night and day. The dragonlings, curious, soared brief circuits, then settled on upriver crag, supervised by unsullied helmed in reflective bronze. Jon donned dark leathers, trimmed in stark gray, longclaw strapped across back more for symbol than blade. Daenerys wore flowing tunic of deep plum over riding trousers, practical yet regal. Her cloak fastened by brooch hammered, half wolf, half dragon, tails twined. They entered amphitheater side by side, cheers rippling like surf rolling stone. Together they ascended dais of simple cedar, refusing old thrones. Tyrion, master of ceremonies, used no dais. He strolled before crowd with a wooden staff, tapping for attention. He recited charter preamble, voice carrying by cunning amphitheater acoustics. Rights of free speech, vote tallies by show of tokens, dragon law articles 1 through 9. The crowd murmured, but no uproar. Sansa presented grain accord. Yara pledged Iron Isles shipping lanes open. Gendry swore smith guilds would cap prices on harvest tools. Applause, whistles, stamping, and energy alive. Mid-morning, Bran in his weirwood chair glided forward, pushed by a tall wildling boy. Silence rolled like hush of cathedral tide. Bran's eyes shone clouded silver. I bring warning, he said, and despite frailty his words carried. From east sails stormfire. Stand as one or ash shall be your common cloak. He turned his gaze skyward. Of nothing. A ripple of unease. But Tyrion resumed agenda. The moot voted article by article. When midday bell rang, they had ratified the charter, A's roaring from fisher-mouths and high-born throats alike. Jon felt tension slack, like pulled bow easing at last. Then Viserion screamed. The grown dragon dove from tier of cloud with wings locked, tail whipping. Drogon followed, black thunderbolt. Their bellies glowed faint, not with flame but iridescent warning. Shadows broke sun. Shapes burst from blue. Iron-scaled wyverns, half again size of frostfire but leaner, flanks studded with mottled plate. Riders in rust-red masks crouched low, spears glinting. They rode thermal pockets Bran had foretold, slanting in silence until moment descent stalled. Now they struck, shrieking guttural commands. Panic kicked the moot like a startled horse. Delegates scattered. Children cried. But unsullied phalanxes locked shields round arena rim, presenting obsidian-tipped spears upward. Dragons answered faster. Whirlwind catapulted from cliff to intercept first wyvern. Yara bellowed ironborn curse lost in gale. Claws tangled. Wyvern's neck snapped sideways under whirlwind's momentum, but not before acid barbs scraped Yara's pauldron. She howled, yet kept seat. At Daenerys Jon whistled sharp. Emberclaw launched from rail where he had perched behind banners, wings still stubby but fierce. Frostfire with Arya spiraled beside him, blue flame ready. Quick spear swooped to Gendry's shout. The first acid spear struck amphitheater stone yards from Bran, sizzling hole through cedar stadeboards. Delegates huddled under benches. Sam rushed to shield Elia and Gilly, thrusting parchment satchel as poor buckler. Smoke from acid thickened air, choking. Viserion collided with two wyverns at once, jaws crushing a torso. Rider vanished in gore. Drogon exhaled full fire gout, incinerating another in mid-arc. But more poured, a dozen then 15. Beyond them glided a larger beast, almost dragon-sized, cast in mottled black glass, wings webbed by scarlet veins. On its back stood a figure robed in scale-cloth, Magarax the Unshorn. He raised both arms. Wind shifted sudden, a spiral of ashy air swirling downward. Jon felt skin prickle as though storm charged around his lungs. The juvenile dragons faltered mid-wing, wings jittering. Bran cried out, his eyes rolled white. Jon sensed unseen tether, clutching hatchlings' wills, dragging them like fish on line. Emberclaw shrieked in pain, banking erratic. Frostfire's azure flame hiccuped, died. Jadewing and Quickspear wheeled uncertainly, as if reins yanked by phantom rider. Horror clenched Jon's chest. Magarax chanted in sonorous Valyrian older than his own. Syllables knife-sharp, ... Daenerys vaulted onto Drogon's shoulder, urging higher. Viserion fought crosswinds, trying to shield hatchlings. Jon sprinted to Sam, seized dragon-glass horn they had crafted for emergencies. He blew. A deep note spread, harmonic with secret names each rider had forged in fire. He roared Emberclaw's name across bond. Like chain snapping, Emberclaw's confusion broke. The hatchling regained eyes of molten orange and dove for Jon, landing with jarring thud between dais and stands. Frostfire shook free next. Arya's laugh rang wild. Magarax hissed, raising a blood-inked talisman. He flung acid spear at Jon. Wall. Drogon banked, intercepting, but tip grazed his wing root. Thick smoke hissed from wound. Daenerys gasped, but clenched thighs, guiding Drogon into barrel roll that scattered two approaching wyverns. Sam shoved parchment bag into Jon's hands. Dragon's mercy, he said. Inside lay half-dozen glass orbs filled with rolling black-green wildfire and obsidian shards. Jon gritted teeth, grasped two. He clambered onto Emberclaw's back. The hatchling leapt skyward under weight jitters but strength enough. Arya caught up on Frostfire, nodding grim. They flung wide over amphitheater. Below, unsullied archers loosed barbed ropes tipped with dragonglass hooks that snagged wyverns' wings, hauling beasts earthward to be speared by farmers turned soldiers. A spectacle of unity Bran had foreseen, though in darker colors. Drogon engaged Magarax's monstrous mount, but Sorcerer's beast endured fire, scales shunting flames off like rain on slate. Magarax spun a flail of chain weighted by obsidian crystal, striking Drogon's cheek, cutting gouge. He hurled curse. Crack of light splintered sky. Drogon reeled. Emberclaw screeched challenge that sounded almost comedic from small chest, yet courage burned hotter than size. Jon guided dive at Magarak's flank. He hurled first wildfire orb. It burst against iron scale, green fire spraying sorcerer's cloak. Magarax howled as cloth ignited, but he slapped flames with gauntlet, muttering quench spell. No mortal blaze would fell him quickly. Arya flew crosswise, frostfire trailing ice-flecked breath that crusted sorcerer's mount's tail in rhyme. Tail faltered, beast lost altitude. Drogon seized chance, jaws locking on neck ridge. Bones cracked. Sorcerer staggered, but drew obsidian dagger riven with glyphs. He leapt from failing beast onto Drogon's shoulder, scrambling toward Daenerys. Jon's heart froze. He spurred Emberclaw closer, but hatchling's wingbeat strained against gale whipped by spells. Below, Bran's voice echoed in mind. Melt his chain of blood. Wild idea flashed. Jon yanked second orb stopper, exposing wildfire to air but not tossing. He thrust orb into Emberclaw's throat. Dragonling gagged, throat scales heating. Spit! Jon barked. Emberclaw coughed, then belched streak of emerald wildfire streaked with obsidian slivers, arching like comet. It struck Magarak square as he raised blade for Daenerys. Sorcerer engulfed in green nova. The obsidian shards carried secret names sung by riders. They sliced runes chalked across his chest, scattering power. He screamed, a keening note that splintered wyvern wills. His body, wreathed by unnatural flame, toppled from Drogon's shoulder and plummeted into sea far below, hiss of steam rising like sigh of Titan. Instantly remaining wyverns shrieked discordantly, wings beating errant. Some dove after master's corpse, others fled east, riders abandoning saddles to fatal tides. Padrans pursued, shepherding stragglers away. Within minutes skies cleared except for circling guardians and smoke wisps. On ground, a ragged cheer swelled, rolling like thunderclap of relief. Jon guided Emberclaw down near Bran. Daenerys landed Drogon, sliding half-trembling to earth. They met halfway, embraced, foreheads smudged with soot and salt. No words needed. Maiden's rest smoldered in places, but few civilians had perished thanks to unsullied shield wall and swift dragons. Healers worked, Gendry with hammered buckets forming chains of water, Dornish priests chanting cool prayers. In courtyard Bran whispered to sapling hearttree. Stormfire spent. That night, under star-blazed calm, the moot reconvened by torch and glowworms. Delegates bandaged, hair singed, but spirits ablaze. They ratified final articles in single unanimous call. Dragon law stood, small folk assembly formed, each realm sworn to uphold watch against skyborn tyrants. Never had Westeros spoken with one voice so clear. At banquet celebrating improbable victory, Yara teased Jon. Feed that hatchling more wildfire, and you'll need new shipbuilding yard to house his ego. Jon chuckled, ruffling Emberclaw's cheek. Sansa toasted Daenerys, acknowledging Queen's fire, tempered by Wolf's ice. Daenerys replied with toast to northern resilience. In firelight, their smiles sealed previous wariness. Tyrion approached Jon late, cup sloshing arbor gold. Did you plan to weaponize wildfire vomit, or was that bastard luck? Bit of both, Jon admitted. Tyrion clapped him on wounded shoulder, then apologized 3 times. Hours into revelry, Bran summoned riders to beach, where waves glowed plankton silver. He pointed to constellations shifting overhead. Valyrian candlefall silent. Ashen brotherhood broken. But east still smokes. Someone will gather those embers. Jon traced horizon where faint red pulsed. Volcanic glow? Or memory of wildfire? Daenerys stepped to his side, her hand weaving fingers into his. Let them come, she said. Across this water stand 7 dragons now, and a realm that has felt their heat without burning. Bran's gaze slid to Jon. Heat softens hearts. So does harvest of words. He smiled faint, cryptic as always, then wheeled himself back toward camp. Moon climbed high. On cliff ledge hatchlings wrestled, wings flapping delighted sparks. Viserion lay curled guarding them, drooping lids fighting sleep. Drogon roosted on keep's highest tower, dark sentinel, carved against star. Jon turned to Daenerys. "Marry me tomorrow." Surprise loosened her breath into laugh gentle as tide. "Tomorrow? What of crowns and feasts and dress or no dress, before hearth or sky? We've waded through ice and fire. Storms will not cease." He cupped her cheek. "But I will not spend another dawn wondering if ashes will be our wedding gift." She searched his face, found steady flame there. "Tomorrow, then," she agreed. He kissed her salt-sweet lips, the taste of tears and sea and smoke melding into promise older than either. Overhead stars wheeled in silent approval, and dragons sang low, onto midnight air. Not the scream of battle, but lullaby of eggs yet unlaid, of futures not yet forged. Across Maiden's rest smallfolk and lords alike, slept or celebrated, sharing ale, stories, and song. Fear might return with sunrise, but for this stolen night, the realm breathed together. Jon led Daenerys up flagstone stair newly cold with dew. They paused where keep's foundations cut silhouette against moon. He whispered that shell Sansa had given him, produced it from pocket. "We leave shells when we outgrow them," he said, placing it into her palm, "but carry imprint." She closed fingers around fragile spiral, eyes shining. Inside half-finished hall builders had strewn straw for tomorrow's carpenters. They lay among scent of fresh timber and stone dust, whispering of brood sky journeys they would one day make, escorting merchant caravans across Dorne's blazing flats, guiding fleets to re-ice Castle Black. Maybe one day an eastward voyage to see Valyria's smoking shadow, and prove to any lingering tyrants that dragons born of choice, not blood purity, soared there now. When dawn flushed sea gold, bells pealed from improvised belfry, a smith's anvil hoisted on frame, and all camp roused. Under arch woven of woven wildflowers, Jon and Daenerys spoke vows before Bran, who recited in tongue of old gods and new Yi. Sansa stood witness for wolf, Tyrion for dragon. Ghost trotted between lines, tail sweeping dust. Emberclaw perched on dais edge, crooning happy rumble. His wing brushed frost fires as though sealing compact. The cheers that followed rolled clear across water, startling shoals into glitter leaps. Fishermen on distant boats shaded eyes, saw dragons hover above isle like living sigils, and felt fear ease into awe. Later, as feasting broke into dancing, Jon carried Daenerys to cliff where first sunlight glared bright. Their joint kingdom lay sprawled, from white eddies on rocks to green scaffolds of hatchery, and violet tents, where moot delegates still debated taxes, even during wedding. It was messy, imperfect, alive. "Where do we fly first, queen of mine?" Jon asked. She leaned into him, gaze turned northward where faint line of mountains hazed blue. "Home," she said. "Winterfell, and every village between. I would show them the sky belongs to them too." He nodded, and felt weight of purpose settle like mantle comfortably at last. Tomorrow they would mount Viserion and Drogon, and behind them 6 young dragons would wheel eager, flips and dives above wheat plains, burning only clouds. And if shadows rose again across sea, the realm would answer not with fear, but with 1,000 voices chosen freely, bound by fire tempered in wolf's resolve. For the moment, though, husband and wife simply watched gulls chaining pearls of foam along coves, the morning smelling of bread, fresh mud mortar, and faint dragon scent, promise of warmth in ages to come. Dew cloaked the rolling meadow north of Maiden's Rest in a silver hush, and Jon Snow breathed in the scent of wet grass and the faint sulfur of dragons as dawn spread a rose-gold band across the eastern sea. He had slept scarcely 2 hours in the aftermath of the wedding feast, yet the tiredness felt light on his shoulders, like a half-remembered dream slipping off as the day spread its wings. Down the slope the camp still lay in joyful disarray, tipped goblets glinting in the grass, garlands sagging from tent poles, braziers smoldering with the last of the celebratory boar. It was a shambles made by happiness, and for once in his life, Jon let the sight warm him. Viserion perched on a basalt ridge above the meadow, tail draped over the rock like a pale pennant, watching the younger dragons hack awkwardly at the succulent marrow of a freshly killed aurochs. Emberclaw, jaws smeared red, swaggered around the carcass as though he alone had brought the beast down, though Jon had seen Frostfire and Jadewing do most of the work in a flurry of blue fire and green talons. Even so, he admired the hatchling's small swagger. A year ago, Emberclaw had been an egg no bigger than Jon's helm. Now he stretched nearly 20 feet from nose to tail, his charcoal and crimson hide lacquered with new scale plates that dawn light caught like ember chips in a hearth. They grew so quickly it scared Jon, not because he feared what they might become, but because he could never be sure the realm would grow wise as fast as they grew strong. Footsteps rustled behind him. Daenerys approached with her wedding cloak draped across her shoulders, the wolf and dragon brooch sparkling where early sun kissed the silver thread. Her hair still smelled of smoke and jasmine oil from the celebration, a scent he had begun to associate with home. Wordlessly, she slipped her arm through his. Together they watched Frostfire flap clumsily backwards from the aurochs, proud wings scattering gulls from their morning hunt along the shallows. "They'll need more space soon," she said, voice husky with sleep and wonder. "An island cannot hold 7 dragons for long." Jon nodded, his gaze roving across the horizon where the sea blurred into sky. "We knew this day would come, and the realm must be ready when they cleave cloud and shadow both." His eyes sharpened, recalling the charred remains of wyverns, and the green-black scorch of Magarax's corpse on the sea. The Ashen Brotherhood was one head of the Hydra. If we let the other heads grow, they'll snap at us before the hatchlings reach their full weight. Daenerys squeezed his fingers. "We'll not let them grow." He heard the unspoken question in her tone. "How?" Since the moot, their counsel had hammered at the question nightly. Oldtown still seethed with cloaked acolytes who muttered that dragons were a pestilence returned. The Iron Bank in Bravos had begun quietly buying Stormland's debt, a leverage play that Tyrion suspected pointed back to disgraced Tycho Nestoris. Ships from Qarth had anchored off the Broken Arm, emissaries requesting dragonfire shows, in honor of the Union, while their holds bulged with caged manticores. Gift-wrapped poison, if the rumor mill proved true. And far in the east, shadowfolk stole through Valyria's fractured skyline, plucking hatchling stories from gullible sailors. Daenerys drew breath. "We begin with the north. Your people stood firm in the moot, yet many still distrust dragons. Your sister writes of food caravans that welcome our banners by day and hide pitch barrels by night. When your flock fears its shepherd, wolves circle closer." Jon's mouth twitched. "We'll show them shepherds can carry torches without burning the lambs. A jubilee flight, dragons sowing warmth for crofters before first frost." She laughed softly. Dany and Jon's detour across the kingdoms, a pageant of skyfire. He nuzzled her temple. And you can give them flowery speeches while I shovel ash." A gust stirred the grass and a voice called. "Shovel talk suits a king no better than a goat suits gold." Tyrion hobbled up the slope, cloak askew, face puffy from wine yet eyes sharp as a new-honed razor. Behind him marched Gendry and Celaena, their dragons quickspear and Jadewing chivying each other like squabbling siblings. Tyrion shook a rolled parchment at them. "Dispatches from King's Landing. The grain guilds have ratified the harvest quotas, but the gold cloaks report unrest in Fleabottom. Someone's preaching that the new council is a puppet of dragon spawn and snowborn witchcraft. I've hanged 3 cut purses in effigy." "And now?" Jon exhaled. "If that's the worst they hang, I'll count blessings." "Perhaps," Tyrion said. "But who do you imagine paid for the cloth banners and the stage? Not the cut purses themselves. Some gold lines those coffers." His eyes lost focus. "I've sniffed this wine before. The bouquet of an old Lannister cask. My sister may be ash, but her cellar lingers in appetites." "Ben?" Gendry folded huge arms. "If someone buys protests, we build trust by feeding the hungry. No one bites the baker's hand." Celaena bowed slightly. "The Dornish caravans roll north within the fortnight. With them, oranges and spices. I've a mind to send 2 wagons east of Maidenpool, where the storm damage ruined crops." She raised an eyebrow at Tyrion. Half challenge, half plea for funds. Tyrion sighed theatrically. "Very well. The treasury will play Father Bountiful. But those wagons must fly banners of every realm, not merely Dorne or Targaryen. Unity must be baked, basted, and served hot, or it hardens like week old bread." Memsau. As they spoke, Bran's ravens descended from the western cliffs, 3 at once, black feathers shining. One alighted on Jon's forearm, a parchment tied to its leg. He untied the knot. Bran's thin script read, "Stormglass rising 3 nights hence. Dreams show a fire in the eastern horizon brighter than moon. Trust the glass to guide you. Send Wolf." Jon passed message to Daenerys, who frowned. "Stormglass. Dragonstone's old beacon tower uses firestones indoors to magnify light," Tyrion noted. "A costly signal. Unless it warns of invasion." Jon's stomach knotted. Bran rarely misplaces visions. If Stormglass flares, something crosses the narrow sea with ill intent. His eyes flicked to Daenerys. "We meant to go north, but Dragonstone calls louder." She nodded. "A flight, then. You on Viserion, me on Drogon. Hatchlings stay, except Emberclaw." The others stared. Gendry shook head. "He's half-grown and green as summer wheat." "A full sea crossing? Risky." "Da." Jon sensed Dragonling listening behind him, neck craning. "He needs ocean winds sooner or later," he said. "And if fire brews out there, having 2 proven flames and 1 unpredictable spark might tip scales." Tyrion shrugged. "Very well. Who am I to lecture parents about overprotective instincts?" They left that evening, slipping skyward in streaks of gold and sable. Frostfire and Jadewing herded the remaining 3 youngsters toward a stone outcropping, sentinel perch above the hatchery. Jon caught Arya's salute, a scissoring swirl of twin daggers, just before clouds swallowed the island. Night brought an iron chill at altitude. Viserion's wings beat the air in long, steady sweeps that vibrated through Jon's thighs, a wordless promise of endurance. Drogon range flanked to starboard, each thrust of his wings forging currents Emberclaw glided on, the young dragon thrilled by hot thermals, yet yelping when turbulence bucked. Below, Blackwater Bay glittered with fishing lanterns. By midnight, the last flickers of civilization lay astern. Ahead spread water like endless polished obsidian, and far at its rim, a pulse of orange-red teased the horizon. Dragonstone's stormglass beacon, burning fiercer than Jon had ever seen. They banked. As they neared, he saw flames roaring from peak of the volcano tower, licking sky like a fiery tongue. Atop the curtain wall, soldiers signaled with mirrored shields. Jon angled Viserion into a spiral descent. Drogon followed, Emberclaw wobbling last but proud. On the ash-strewn courtyard, Sir Davos Seaworth awaited, cloak whipping in volcanic gusts. Behind him stood Melisandre, flame-eyed and silent as ever. When Jon dismounted, the Onion Knight's face was grave. "Forgive the ruse, your graces. The beacon was lit for more than warning. We needed you swift, and flame calls dragons quicker than crows." Jon frowned. "What threat demands subterfuge?" Melisandre stepped forward, her red robe swirling. An omen speaks through the glass candle. A great hush sweeps the sky, reaches east of Valyria. Ships unmade, sailors struck blind. Those who dream see black water whirl around an eye of burning ice. Daenerys' breath hissed. "Another sorcerer?" Melisandre shook her head. "Not a man. A thing born of doom and exile. The worm of Haenyr's fall." Jon recalled the name from dusty margins of Sam's scrolls. A colossal drake rumored to roam Valyrian ruins, immune to fire, scales blacker than shadow, eyes like dying stars. A myth, Sam had insisted. Yet myth birthed the Night King once, and Magarax had coaxed wyverns to unnatural cunning. Davos cleared throat. "The Red Woman's flames show the beast stirring east, close to Summer Sea. If it heads west, It passes near Driftmark in a fortnight. Worse. Merchant cogs out of lace swear a fleet sails with it, long ships clad in obsidian. No colors, but crewed by shaved-skull fanatics. Menno. Jon's pulse hammered. The Ashen Brotherhood's survivors. Or something fouler, Melisandre whispered. They wear glyphs none have seen, eyes watered by shade of the evening. They call themselves Scions of Shadowflame. Daenerys' lip curled. Always new masks for old hatreds. Jon looked from her to Davos. How many ships? 5 dozen, if the Lyseni sailor reckoned true. Their prows carved like drakes. Daenerys inhaled slowly. We're 2 full dragons and 1 half-grown. Even with Driftmark scorpions that fleet could land. Not if we meet them at sea, Melisandre said. Burn them beneath the eclipse. Eclipse? Jon echoed. She pointed skyward. 2 nights hence the new moon will swallow the sun over the summer sea. In that shadow, magic unknots. Dragons may find their fire fickle, or fierce beyond measure. Her voice thrummed with thrill and dread equally. An hour of uncertainty that could yield triumph or ruin. Davos nodded to Emberclaw, who perched uneasily on Battlement Peak. We filled 3 dramens with wildfire casks. If you lure fleet into kill zone, the Iron Fleet under Lady Yara can strike from the flank and cage the beast between flame and steel. Jon rubbed his brow. This plan rests on timing a celestial event, none control. And on trust and prophecy, Daenerys said, eyes locked on Melisandre. Years ago, the Red Priestess had promised her she was Azor Ahai reborn, then pivoted to Stannis. Now she spoke of worms and eclipse. But the beacon in Bran's letter glowed bright, and his sight had seldom misled them. Jon lowered hand. We fight. If we cower, that fleet lands on Driftmark, and the realm sees dragons retreat from shadow. He studied Emberclaw, then Daenerys. We must test him. If his fire fails at eclipse, we withdraw. Melisandre's smile flickered. His fire is wildfire now, an echo of birth made anew by glass shards. He may burn brighter than any. A shiver licked Jon's spine. The wildfire trick had been desperate improvisation. He could not know what effect a second such breath would have on the young dragon, or on anything near him. They spent the next day readying. Driftmark's small harbor teemed with black-hulled longships, iron-borne axes glinting under autumn sun. Yara greeted them with a brusque nod, arms still bound where wyvern acid scarred flesh. One more scar for the saga. You bring bigger prey this time. On shore archers dipped arrowheads in wildfire gel. Smiths hammered scorpion bolts longer than an arm. Sails went up at twilight. Jon and Daenerys took to skies, Viserion and Drogon as shepherd ravens guiding the ships. Emberclaw flew just behind, still small enough to tuck into their drafts. The combined fleet, Targaryen, Valyrian, Ironborn, cut south across a growing swell. Beneath cloudy heavens, the air tasted like iron and resin. Above, the sky darkened with the hush of something vast waiting beyond sight. Near midday on the second day, Ghost, stowed on the flagship with Bran's ravens, threw back his head and howled. Jon heard it faint across the wind. At that moment, the horizon split. A serrated line of obsidian prows slicing water, black sails blotting sky, a moving midnight. Closer still, behind them, a darker shade loomed, an enormous mass heaving above whitecaps, ridged and spined. The worm of Haenyr's Fall towered like a moving island, wingless, propelled by sinuous coils and webbed fins that churned sea into boiling froth. Its scales glistened slick oil-black, 2 eyes burned cobalt in its gator-like skull. Fear lanced Jon, visceral, primal. Even Drogon faltered mid-wing beat, a low, thrumming growl rippling through his chest. Viserion hissed, flame leaking from nasal vents. Emberclaw keened but held formation. Dram on flagship, blue horn, fleet ready. Yara's ironborn rowers roared hallmark battle chants. Jon signaled descent, leading dragons into low swoop above waves. Their job, draw worm and fleet across the kill zone where wildfire dramens lurked windward. He loosed first gout, Viserion's pale gold flame gashing the lead ship's mast. Wood charred instantly, but the sailcloth did not take. The fabric had been tar-coated. Figures on deck raised shields of mirrored obsidian. Flame scattered. They drew bows flecked with shimmering runes, releasing shafts that trailed streaks of violet sparks. One clipped Viserion's left wing. Pain flared through bond, but scale held. Drogon's broader cone of fire fared better, toppling 2 mastheads, sending their sails writhing in flame. Yet crew raced with buckets of black sand that smothered the blaze. These men had prepared for dragonfire. The worm bellowed, a roar deeper than water caverns, so low Jon felt teeth vibrate. It opened jaws, and instead of flame spewed a torrent of scalding brine flecked with glowing mineral flecks. The seawater geysers sizzled up, striking Drogon's underside. Steam burst, forcing Daenerys to haul hard starboard. Behind, Emberclaw angled under Drogon, avoiding spray, tiny flames spitting in anxious bursts. Jon called across bond. Steady. The sun at its zenith began to dim. A sickle of night nibbled its rim. Eclipse commencing. Shadows lengthened. Sky turned copper. Now. Jon signaled Dromans. 3 lighter ships swung out, green-bannered. Catapults heaved casks arcing across darkening sky. Viserion and Drogon wheeled wide to scorch the casks midair. They burst into sheets of emerald fire, raining onto fleet's forward line. Hulls ignited where tar met cursed flame. Screams lifted, but enemy kept advance, axes hacking burning planks free. Worm lashed tail. A wave near 20 feet rose, slapped wildfire aside with hissing protest, dampening some deck blazes. It surged, jaws opening again. Jon drove Viserion higher, searching for weak spots. The creature had no wings, but ridge plates overlapped like fortress shields. Flame might seep between, maybe obsidian would bite. He drew Horn of Dragon's mercy, but hesitated. One wildfire belch had saved them. A second might tear Emberclaw's throat if done wrong. And the eclipse ate sunlight fast. Dragon's inner fire flickered with celestial shift. Viserion's flame cone thinned, growing fitful. Melisandre's warning rang. Fire fickle or fierce? He gambled. Ember, to me, he called aloud, though wind tore words. The hatchling arrowed closer, eyes anxious. Jon guided them above Worm's skull crest. He saw blowholes where air whistled steam, if wildfire ignited inside. But first Emberclaw needed fuel. Jon reached into saddle pack, withdrew a flask of wildfire seeds, tiny crystal shards coated in cloth. He tossed them into Emberclaw's maw.g. The dragonling gulped. Drogon dived from opposite flank, Daenerys standing in stirrups to fling last cask at Crest Ridge. It shattered. Green fluid cascaded down armored plates. Worm shook head, but brine spray could not douse it. Uncanny flame clung like hungry vines. Now, Jon shouted. Emberclaw, disoriented, opened jaws. A tongue of emerald flame streaked, but wider and hotter than their first battle. Sun eclipse synergy sharpening volatile breath. The torrent slammed into slick wildfire film, forcing it through vent slit into creature's gullet. For a breath, nothing happened. Then the worm convulsed, throat distending. Vibrations rippled along its spine plates. A roar half formed before a geyser of green-white fire erupted from mouth, nose vents, eye sockets. Fire turned inside out. The beast thrashed. Sea fountained. Ships pitched. Enemy crews shouted in terror. Some dove overboard. Jon hauled Viserion clear of superheated plume. Drogon veered above opposite wave crest. The worm's burning vitals pumped molten fluid outward until cracks spidered shell scale. At last a blast concussed water and sky. Sound like the wall fracturing. Then the creature sagged, steam pluming from dozens of ruptures. Its body slid beneath waves, leaving whirlpool of frothing emerald. Leaderless fleet faltered. Yara's longships surged from windward, ramming. Ironborn leapt with grapnels, cutting lines, torching decks. Without worm screen, dragonfire gained bite. Drogon burned 3 warships in sweeping arc. Viserion 2 more. Those not afire scattered outward, raising blackwing pennants. Surrender. The battle waned before priests could chant new curse. When last ember hissed out, the eclipse's umbra drifted west. Sunlight returned in bleeding ring. Overchurned sea, mangled ships listed, but Driftmark remained distant. Safe. Jon dismounted on flagship deck once stowed with airy nets. Sailors pounded spears on shields lauding dragons. Emberclaw landed heavily, coughing green sparks but otherwise hale. Jon stroked trembling neck. "Brave fool," he murmured. Daenerys slipped from Drogon nearby, hair whipping her cheeks, eyes wide with adrenaline. They met in mid-deck, clasping forearms then kissing amid cheers. Across deck Davos exhaled a prayer, crossing heart twice. "7, save me from more victories like that," he muttered. Tyrion later tallied cost. 3 Ironborn ships lost, 2 Viserion. Half a dozen wounded by brine-scald, but realm spared coastal siege. Unnamed sorcerer generals among enemy drowned or captured. Fetching survivors haul from water, claimed the Scions followed the Leviathan of Final Dawn. A creature their magi bred from unhatched drake and sea serpent, meant to devour Valyria's lingering fires. Magarax had been disciple, his failure only first attempt. Jon heard and felt chill deeper than wave spray. They had slain a horror, yet enemies forged horrors new awe. Dragons might rule sky, but seas, earth, and arcane fissures still hid nightmares. They returned to Maiden's Rest as heroes anew, but victory borne on heavier wings. Messages waited. Gendry reported frost pockets in northern marches killing autumn shoots prematurely. Sansa wrote of a fever-sweeping White Harbor. Arya hinted some Vale Lords whispered that hatchlings' wildfire breath was proof dragons now unnatural abominations. At council table, Jon set fist on board. Win 1 war, birth 2 fears. He looked to Daenerys. "We need groundwork stronger than steel." She met his gaze. "Teach them dragons can heal as well as burn." So a new decree formed. Each dragon, and its bonded rider, would champion a realm's work of renewal. Frostfire and Arya to the Vale, clearing avalanche rubble. Jadewing and Solenna to Dorne, carving channels to irrigate parched groves. Whirlwind with Yara would patrol coasts, shredding slavers. Quickspear and Gendry would lend flame to glass furnaces in King's Landing, rebuilding shattered domes. Emberclaw and Jon. He would range north, sowing warmth in dead fields and melting old distrust, ghost trotting proud by his side. Drogon and Daenerys would rove between, ambassadors of flame and justice. The plan convened, murmured approval. Yet Bran spoke from end of table. "Beyond all tasks, you must guard shards of doom. Sorcerers lost 1 Leviathan, but they still hold 3 eggs forged from its marrow. To hatch, they need dragon-blooded sacrifice." He stared at Jon, then Daenerys. "Your blood sings loudest. Beware nets of silk and silver tongues." The warning chilled room. Tyrion cleared throat. "Well, best armor against kidnapping is to never part from one another." A half-smile curved Jon's mouth. Marriage vows prove practical once again. Daenerys rose, palm on table. "Then we go together, first to Winterfell, then on a grand circuit of kingdoms. Every fortnight we return here, anchor realm's heartbeat." She turned to Jon. "Shall we test frost before winter fully grips?" He recalled wide fields beyond last hearth, damper than a drowned cloak. "Aye, time to sow warmth." He looked to Emberclaw, perched outside window. "And teach a young dragon the taste of snow." 2 weeks later, they soared over the white knife's glittering braid. Winterfell's gray sprawl unfurled ahead, banners snapping wolf and dragon crest. Down below, children in patched cloaks pointed and shrieked delight as Emberclaw banked low, melting crusted puddles into steaming rivulets. Jon landed Viserion in Godswood clearing, branches trembling under downdraft. Sansa strode from archway, foxfur cloak flaring. They embraced tight. From parapets Bran watched, a faint smile on lips. His ravens perched behind him, sky-born scribes chronicling weave of era. Jon walked fields that evening, guiding Viserion's gentle flame across long furrows. The soil steamed, crofter wives scattered seed in warm furrows, tears of relief tracking cheeks. Later, by hearth in great hall, small folk pressed gifts, simple bread, carved wolf whistles, a threadbare baby blanket for promised child. Jon's chest ached with humility. At dawn he found Daenerys in courtyard teaching Emberclaw to scoop snow and toss it skyward like handfuls of white petals. Children laughed, trying to catch flakes before they melted in dragon-fanned winds. Something in that image, fire and frost interlacing in play, settled in Jon's heart like a promise fulfilled. That night, as they lay beneath fur quilts in his boyhood chamber, he whispered, "If we survive every shadow flame, will the world finally settle?" Daenerys brushed thumbs along his scars. "The world has tides, calm never stays, but we'll ride crests not drown in troughs." She kissed him soft. "Besides, we've yet to fly beyond the far ice. Who knows what lights dance there?" He chuckled. "Trust a Targaryen to seek more sky even when horizon is full. Trust a wolf to chase moonlight." She countered. They slept entwined, dreams lit with aurora-shaped dragons dancing in ever-summer night. Spring edged toward full bloom, though cold lingered north. Dragons fanned warmth across croplands, melted ice jams, carried fever balm batches across leagues faster than ravens flew. Small folk tales bloomed too, Emberclaw roasting bandit camp, Frostfire crafting ice statues for Moondoor Festival, Jadewing diving through sandstorms to bring stormwater to thirsty kine. Everywhere they flew, they left hope and occasionally fear, but fear tempered now by gratitude. Yet rumors filtered. Signs of Shadowflame regrouped near manta rays, forging black obelisks along coast. Valentis triarchs quarreled over sanction. Qarth's warlocks petitioned for arcane disarmament treaties. The world realized dragons' return rewrote balance, and sharpened knives or plowshares accordingly. One crisp morning, as Jon prepared to mount Viserion for circuit to Baraton, Bran summoned him to Godswood. Snow flurried among red leaves. "I saw a river," Bran said. It flowed backward into sky, carrying ships made of bone. Above them rode 3 gravid shadows, eggs in leathery wombs older than doom. They seek the wellspring of warmth, our hearth, because their own ashes cool. Jon knelt by root. "When do they come?" "Not soon, but seasons pass quicker for those who ride fire. They will reach us before Emberclaw is crowned as great as Drogon." Bran's pale eyes searched him. "Teach the world to wield light as well as flame. When bone sails arrive, steel will fail, but light might guide." Jon frowned. "What light?" Bran tapped bark. "The light of many hearts bound in truth. A sword made from songs, not steel. You already forge its blade every time a child laughs beneath dragonwing." The words baffled and comforted. Jon left Godswood heavy with thought. Months rolled. The Charter's small folk assembly, called the Hearthstone, met in King's Landing, voices of potters and shepherds echoing where once mad kings rave. Dragons circled overhead, a living oath that might balanced by fire. In debates, they argued grain tariffs, lobbied for flood dikes, petitioned for healer scholarships. Seeds of change took root. On Maiden's Rest, hatchery towers gleamed with new silver roof, reflecting dawn in mirrored shards. Beneath, 6 dragons sprawled near as large as Drogon once during Marine days. The 7th, Drogon himself, now dwarfed lesser dragons, but he rumbled content at clutch blooming greater than any Targaryen cradle in centuries. That winter Bran's ravens came less frantic, though never wholly quiet. Ashen Brotherhood's remnants tangled with Dothraki Khalasars. Bone ship rumors drifted through fogged taverns, and a black comet burned west to east across sky, omen of unknown tidings. Yet each trouble arrived to a Westeros, no longer fractured, but stitched by flights of flame and acts of bread. And on one still night, when the snow gate gleamed under dancing aurora and wolves howled lullabies to starfields, Jon Snow climbed Winterfell's tallest tower with Daenerys. Viserion and Emberclaw roosted below, cloaks of scale folded. Overhead, the green and purple ribbons shimmered. Daenerys tucked into his arms. She carried snow lily petals braided in hair. "Do you ever miss the quiet before dragons?" He tilted head, listening to distant laughter of stable hands playing dice, to faint wing beats high above, to wind kissing castle stone. "It's quieter now than the years of war and doubt," he answered. "Silence isn't the goal. Harmony is." She hummed agreement. Harmony of wing and claw, of wolf and fire. Her palms splayed across her belly beneath fur. And heartbeat. Jon started, joy punching breath from him. She nodded, tears bright. The world spun gentle, then steadied around new center. He knelt, pressing ear to softness where future fluttered. Behind him dragons rumbled, maybe sensing seed of rider within. Wind carried Bran's voice in memory. Many hearts bound in truth. Jon closed eyes, hearing that sword of song forging already, note by tender note. He rose and kissed Daenerys with all breaths he had left. Over ramparts the 7 dragons lifted heads to Aurora, voices weaving a chord that raced across snows, across seas, across every hearth where hope newly burned. And far away, in an eastern ruin where sorcerers huddled around black eggs, that chord quivered stones, whispering warning. Fire had found harmony with frost, and together they would meet any shadow with light that no doom could swallow.